What should people seriously stop buying for everyone's sake? Online IQ tests. If there was a way to fail an IQ test, paying for one online would be it. Animals, if you can't take care of that animal for the rest of their lives. And if you realize that you made a mistake, rehome them. Do not set them free. Most of them will wreak havoc on the native ecosystem. Just look at the Everglades. Herbalife. Does anyone else notice that those Herbalife smoothie places keep popping up all over, but they're so shady about it? They look like the average mom-and-pop smoothie place with no Herbalife branding on the outside or anywhere inside, but then they start making your smoothie and bam, they pull out the Herbalife powder. Cheap children's party favors. We're not talking the colorful pencils and paper pads that actually have some use. I'm talking about the nondescript plastic forms with popular media stickers and other garbage. The amount of trash plastic available for this niche is staggering, especially given that most of those toys hold a child's attention for 2 hours maximum. Also, Happy Meal toys. Great for a collector because most of them get thrown out 6 months after being found behind the couch. Legos are highly resealable and giftable and tradable. Hot Wheels last forever. Most toys have at least a possible second life, but party favors are crap. It's just crap. These party stores are really depressing too. It's just a building full of garbage made to be used for a few hours, and the kids themselves aren't even paying attention to it when they have it. They'd have more fun with a puddle and some sticks. You should stop buying saltwater fish if you aren't willing to put in the effort. And there are species that just can't be kept in captivity even with the effort. 90% of saltwater fish that you see in stores, except for most clowns, some tangs and some seahorses, and I think maybe cardinal fish as well, are all wild caught. More than any other pet, when you take home a saltwater fish, you've purchased a piece of the environment, and you should treat it with every bit of respect that it deserves. Glitter. Sparkles, glitter, and sequins on everything, especially kids' items. You think it's hard to get that crap out of your house after craft time? It's microplastic, and it's going into our waterways and oceans. Yet the toy stores and clothing stores are adding more sequins and glitter every day. It makes me furious. Just stop buying it. Tasty, tasty microplastic. It's fine, we're already full to the gills with it. What harm could a little more do? Clearly I'm being sarcastic here, folks. Don't buy this crap. Merchandise with the pink "For the Cure" bows. The company made big bucks by selling cancer-causing products and then covering it up, then turning around and keeping a lot of the bucks they collect as donations. I guess it would be more accurate to say that they knowingly promote instead of sell carcinogenic products and activities, such as fracking, which causes a rise in cancers that typically have environmental causes, such as chest cancer, and it suppresses new information about cancer-promoting chemicals like BPA. Detox teas or anything that claims to help rid you of toxins in your body. If you can't do that crap on your own already, then you need a kidney or liver transplant, not a tea that a fit mom is trying to sell you. Anything involved in a multi-level marketing or MLM scan. I'm looking at you, young living essential oils. Fun fact about MLMs. When they ask you to sign up 10 people to move up to the next level, there's something they're not telling you. If everyone has to sign up 10 people, in 10 cycles, you'd run out of people on planet Earth. The reason you hear about so many of them and know so few people in them is because most people are too smart to fall for them. Any kind of shower gel or face wash that has those plastic microbeads in them. The beads are small enough to get through most filtration systems and are ruinous to marine life. I thought those were banned a while ago. Oh my god. I mean, there's so many potential products, but just stop buying so much. You don't need all that frickin' crap. Stop it. Other people. This isn't a super salacious or flashy response, but nobody should be buying a boiler, furnace, or water heater below 90% efficiency. The 80% efficiency equipment is ancient technology and you're throwing your money away while also spewing more greenhouse gases. Tiny plastic garbage. I see TikToks of people unboxing like these tiny mini plastic toys of name brand items, and they'll have hundreds of them all individually wrapped in multiple layers of packaging just to have tiny replicas of a little bottle of Windex or Lay's potato chips for some reason. Shark fin soup. The fishers only want the fin and they throw the fish out to the sea after cutting it off since the other body parts have no monetary value, leaving the shark to die. How does the rest of the meat not have any demand? I believe shark meat in general is very high in mercury, meaning eating a lot of it is very bad for you. The real reason though is that the fins are just worth so much that taking up room with the actual whole shark just isn't cost effective. I cannot understand the people that buy holiday decor every single year. Are people buying fake trees and tossing them every year and needing a new one? Same thing with ornaments and whatnot. Obviously, people move out of their parents or they need replacement ornaments if they've broken something, but the amount in stores just doesn't add up to me. Why so much new stuff every year? Our city has a spot to dump your real Christmas trees to be ground into mulch. Every year there are multiple trees on the pile, still fully decorated with lights, ornaments, and the whole thing. It always blows our minds how stupid people can be. Fast fashion. Cigarettes. Quit while you can, internet friends. Animals that are so inbred to meet a certain breed standard that they're a walking vet bill from birth. I'm a vet tech and I'm so sick of seeing inhumane traits bred into a lot of dogs. Brachycephalic dog breeds such as French bulldogs are being an example. On top of that, golden retrievers have become cancer machines. Some of the worst skin and food allergy dogs that we treat are purebred poodles, and other purebred dog owners spend a couple of grand on them. Right now there's a 4-month-old doggo Argentino flown in from like Puerto Rico. Cost them at least 5 grand for that dog. He's bilateral cryptochid, and they keep asking what we can do for him so he can stud. And we keep explaining that even if he ends up not being sterile, cryptochidism is genetic and not something anyone should be breeding. The owner found a reproductive specialist that's supposedly a veterinarian who's willing to do a procedure to attempt testicular descent. I just can't even fathom any vet in their right mind being willing to do this. It should be classified as animal abuse. It's a serious welfare issue that needs to be addressed. K-cups. If you have a Keurig, use the reusable cup. The sewage that comes out of TV evangelists' mouths. As a Brit, visiting the US and seeing med adverts with endless warnings about side effects, followed by evangelist messages without any warnings, was crazy. Nestle products. That's easier said than done when they own more than 200 brands. Yeah, they're kind of aware that half the planet knows that they're pure evil now, and they're good at squirreling their brand name into some tiny inconspicuous part of the packaging. That's kind of part of the problem. Microtransactions, especially in sports games. Cosmetics in a free-to-play game? I don't have a problem with that. You gotta make money somehow, and it doesn't affect gameplay. Blatant gambling and pay-to-win functionality in games like NBA 2K and Madden? Those can F right off. Oh, you think adult games are bad? Sweet Mother Judas are toddler and under 10 games worse. My wife downloaded a Hot Wheels game for my son for his Amazon Fire tablet. It's riddled with microtransactions and in-game ads that you can't skip, trying to get kids to download the next game. It's not just toxic, it's freaking predatory. There need to be laws banning microtransactions in all formats of digital entertainment. I wouldn't have known about it either if he'd never handed it to me to help him build a tough puzzle track. They bury it so that you don't see it when you get the game from them. It's disgusting. A new phone every year. Who can afford to do this? New phones are like $1,100. My one's 7 years old. Any home exercise machine or equipment that requires a subscription to use. You paid 2 grand for a treadmill and then a recurring monthly fee to use it? How are people paying for this business model? Cricut just tried to pull this stunt. To use their required software to run the machine, they were going to start requiring a subscription fee, even if you were using your own personal vectors that you designed. There was a huge blowback, and they ended up rescinding it. For now, at least. Red Delicious apples. You deserve better than that mushy garbage. Get yourself a Honeycrisp. For a while, I genuinely just thought I kept getting bad Red Delicious apples. Turns out, they're all just awful. Please, uninstall Yelp from your phone. They're nothing more than extortionists that hold small businesses hostage to bad reviews. Real or fake, it doesn't matter. I can't express how crappy Yelp is as a company. Every time you open their app, you give them support. In short, F Yelp. Their salespeople are the worst. I added my tiny business on there, more so I could have another Google result rather than using it as a referral source in itself, and the next day I got a voicemail from their team who made it sound like there was something wrong with my business listing. I returned the call to see what needed to be fixed. He was then extremely pushy to have me pay to be one of the ads that you see at the top of Yelp searches. I said kindly, I'm starting small and focusing on a different area of advertising. He wouldn't let me get off the phone and had a really aggressive tone as the call went on. He told me my business would fail if nobody could find me on Yelp, and to have that happen, I needed the premium features. I had to hang up on him. It was so toxic and really got under my skin. And then I got all of these follow-up calls saying, there seems to be a disconnect between us. I'm really trying to help your business grow. Oh yeah? Then why do you have to harass people to help them? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Caskets, especially those sealed tight ones. Our dead need to decompose, and they will, but the casket can just explode. When I'm dead, I want to be buried in a blanket and tossed in a hole. Let nature worry about me. Plastic bottles. Just buy a water filter and fill up those same bottles. And for people saying just drink tap water, I agree 100%. I'm just saying that there are a lot of people who only buy bottled water, drink it, throw it, and buy another one. Ridiculously unnecessary. Those plastics are so difficult to recycle, if at all. Most just ends up in a landfill anyway. Trying to convince them to buy a water filter is a good middle ground. My father-in-law boasts about how eco-conscious he is, but still does what I've just complained about. It drives me mental. People need to stop scalping GPUs. I mean, you could have stopped at scalping. Individual plastic coffee packets like Keurig cups. Lots of plastic waste. Clothes. I know I don't need any more. I have way too many as it is, and yet I keep buying them, and I kinda hate myself for it. New clothes make me feel so good though. Have you tried thrifting? Less waste and way cheaper, plus you can donate them back again after you're done. Also, finding a piece that fits you and is your style is much more satisfying than picking one off a rack of identical shirts. Smack. People should definitely stop buying smack. This response was brought to you by Crystal. Anything that an influencer gets paid to promote. Diamonds. Then how will my wife know that I love her? Products with palm oil in them. People need to stop buying anything they don't need. Most products create a want and then fill it, and the only purpose of the product is to take money from you and give it to the distributors. I go to estate sales all the time and I see tons of crap that people buy and then never use. You do not need the latest version of a Vegematic. You will never use a slap chopper. The set and forget rotisserie will be used to cook one chicken and then it will go in your basement to be set down and forgotten. That one chicken cost you a lot to cook. You do not need a snow globe from the gift shop to commemorate your trip to the world's biggest ball of twine. It's true that a lot of people make a living making, selling, and shipping this stuff, but they need to retool and just make useful things. Madden. Seriously, basically anything that comes from EA. They've just gotten a bit too greedy for my liking. Things that don't actually offer them joy. So many people just buy crap to feel a temporary high that quickly wears off. University books. Boycott them. Ridiculous price for individuals to pay for education. They should all be online publicly for free. Yeah, there's a fine line to walk between good reference materials that you can get a lot of use out of, and the stuff that's literally just a different edition of the same book every year with one or two sentences difference. Often you can just get these things in your uni library, if it's the latter. Reddit coins. Products from scalpers. Everyone who buys from them is a huge part of the problem. Plastic bags. My father's village is drowning in plastic bags. They're everywhere. Sometimes they melt in the sun, and I don't even want to know what the consequences are for the environment. Fantasy books that are first in a series of 13. Fantasy has become completely entrenched in this model where every story has to be a massive multi-volume epic. I can count on one hand the number of multi-volume series that actually needed to be 8 to 10 books long. Most of them could have been told in one trilogy, if not just one epic book. I 100% believe that writers are pressured to stretch out their 2-volume stories into 8 purely for the additional sales. Fruits and vegetables that are already cut and packaged in plastic. Mother Nature already produced the best natural packaging. Fast fashion, and I might be a hypocrite, because these big companies do not give a fork about workers. Second-hand stuff is the way to go if you want a mainstream brand. Ethical brands are another option, with second-hand ethical brands being the ideal choice. Single-use plastics. Crap toys that you buy at the dollar store. All they are is junk to fill up a landfill. It was nice during COVID when we were producing products that we needed and not all this junk crap that you can see everywhere. Generally speaking, wild-caught animals as pets. I had to go to the pet store today to buy some supplies and I was utterly horrified. Cages of wild-caught lizards, snakes, turtles, frogs and salamanders, many piled on top of each other and writhing around trying to escape. They all look sick and stressed and they're being sold at impulse buy prices. Unfortunately, none of the species I saw have a protected status in this state, and all are considered fair game. But that doesn't make it right. I can guarantee that 90% of the customers in that shop have no idea how to take care of these creatures, and the remaining 10% who do know better than to support their ongoing mass collection. Unless you work for a professional conservation facility or animal rehab center, please leave wild animals in the wild. Flushable wipes. They're actually not flushable and they're bad for your drain system. Giant SUVs and trucks that people don't need. It's one thing if you actually use the capacity regularly, but just to drive to groceries and to work, it's such a massive waste. Bottled water. Foie gras. It made me sick watching a video of a duck being force-fed. Those weird little disability or sickness awareness things like mugs, shirts, and so on. Speaking as a disabled person, not only is it insulting to have the very thing that's been plaguing us stamped on a cute little kid's cup, but it's also a needless waste of resources and money making those items that'll probably be used for a day at most. If people really care, just donate. It's better for the environment and it'll have more of an impact because less is used to make the items. Anything labeled homeopathic or naturopathic or anything like that. It's all pseudoscientific crap. If you are a normal, working-class person, you do not need to pay for tax services. Governments and financial institutions, like your bank, provide free software that you can use to file your taxes. Remember that it's a tax return that you're getting, not some bonus reward, so if you don't have to, it doesn't make sense to pay to get your own money back. Anything that is associated with the trash that is the Kardashian family. The latest phones and electronics. Electronic waste is an insanely big problem, especially in the countries that process, burn, the waste to get the precious metals from them. There is literally nothing wrong with your phone. You only got it less than a year ago. You don't need the latest model. Stop it. Live, love, laugh signs. Everyone in my family has one. This is not a happy house, Janet. All Nestlé products. Their board are like real-life villains. Decimating the environment, child slavery, super violent, and their products suck anyway. Screw Nestlé. Dryer sheets. Single use, they just contribute to your waste output and they make your towels less fluffy. Also, dryer sheets contain a potentially harmful chemical called quaternary ammonium compounds. According to Geller, at the very least it's been known to cause or worsen asthma and skin irritations. You can buy reusable wool dryer balls instead that naturally fluff up your clothes. Helium-filled balloons. Helium is a finite element and we're piddling it away in birthday balloons. Yep, it is absolutely wild that for a while the main visible use of this valuable element was just to hold up our brightly colored party baubles. Nuts. Glide floss. My oral hygienist pointed out that studies have linked the use of this floss with elevated levels of toxic chemicals in the body. Plus, this kind of floss can be too abrasive in the gums, leading to infection and gum recession. Thick, soft-threaded floss is the way to go. Helium balloons. There are so many medical and technical processes which require helium, and it can't be lab-created. It's mined, or extracted might be the right term, and it will eventually run out if things don't change. Single-use water bottles. I've got friends who buy 24 packs every fortnight and drink out of them. It's just literally so bad for the environment. I have a real issue with long-term storage units for most people. I understand that storage units have some value if you're in a situation where you're moving but have a gap without a permanent place to stay, or if you're going to be traveling for a few months or a year and get out of your current rental, as examples of good uses of these places, but I know tons of people who have a whole house or apartment and then rent a storage unit as well for years, and I find it completely baffling. Storage units aren't cheap, but most of what gets stored in them often is. It often works out in my mind that by the time you've paid to store it long enough to actually use it or move it to its final resting place, you could frequently have bought the contents of the storage units several times over. Amazon.com. F the way they treat people. I read an article where instead of buying air conditioning and paying for the extra electricity, Amazon hired EMTs at their warehouse because it was cheaper in extreme heat. Who the F thinks like that? Rags. People actually buy rags to clean with. That's what old clothes are for. That's why they're called rags. Kitchen unitaskers. If I can only use it for one ingredient and I can do that task better with anything else in my kitchen, then it's not worth your time. Thanks, Aunt Becky, but I don't need a watermelon slicer, rollie, or avocado knife. The main thing that comes to mind for me is batteries. I paid for some decent rechargeable batteries back at the start of 2015 as I was going through one AAA battery pack a week, and it honestly saved so much money and waste. I've literally just recycled 2 last month, the first 2 to die in 6 years. The other thing that stands out for me is Samsung products. I feel their quality control has declined over the last few years, and I've totally lost faith in their products. The S4, S5, Tab S2 have all had battery and software issues, and the A70 had a USB-C subboard module issue. I've had 3 repaired with the same issue. And the Tab E had a SIM card or microSD card slot issue. The only one I haven't had software issues with was the A70, but saying that, the repairs were naff. Anything from Wish. Dogs and cats. There are plenty in shelters that need adopting, and they're not inbred puppy mill dogs. Almonds. What an environmental disaster they are. So Chidi from The Good Place was right? What's the most embarrassing thing a parent has done to you? For those who didn't grow up in a time where you shared a phone with multiple extensions with your parents, consider yourselves lucky. For those who did, me. Hi, it's Kerry. I was wondering if you were going to the mall tomorrow. Girl I liked.
Yeah, I think so. It's Saturday, so I usually go with my friends.
Me. Well, if you're there, do you want to, meet up somewhere and have lunch? Girl.
Yeah, that sounds good. Where do you want to go?
Well, I was thinking… There's a click, some numbers dialing. Mum.
Hello?
Me yelling upstairs.
Mom, I'm on the phone!
Mum, through the phone.
Carrie, are you on the phone? I was calling my friend Reva. She's having some people over tomorrow, and I wanted to know if she wanted any potato salad.
Me yelling upstairs.
Mom, I'm on the phone with Susie. Get off!
Mom.
If you want, I can make a little extra so you can take it to judo. I know how you get tired after class. Oh, I hope I get to go this week. You look so handsome in your judo outfit.
Click. Me.
Sorry, Mom can be so embarrassing.
Mom.
I don't think she's there anymore, honey.
My dad was worse. I distinctly remember having a conversation with my best friends over the phone about a boy I liked, and my dad just chimed in with, "Oh, who's Jackson?" because he'd been listening on the other line the whole time. Had my first boyfriend in middle school and brought him home one time. At one point, my mum made him bring me my clean laundry. And by that, I mean a single pair of pink High School Musical underwear. I cried from embarrassment, but he was actually pretty cool about it and comforted me. Then, he cheated on me. My dad, influenced partly by Bad Boys 2, decided to mess with my boyfriend on my first date by acting like a real hard man. He filled a whiskey bottle with tea. Then, when he answered the door, he chugged the whole thing while staring my boyfriend down, then tried to break the bottle over his own head. The date was cancelled due to the hospital trip, and I became known as the girl with the bat crap insane father. "Don't concuss yourself this time," became the running joke once I was able to get a date again. That's incredible, and I want to know whether the father knew the risk involved or was just actually stupid enough to try and emulate something he'd seen on TV.
I want to know what the hospital people said. I know when my partner had an oral allergic reaction to my rats and his face started swelling up like those pics of dogs that ate bees, the health center staff was highly entertained. My butt was sitting there in the waiting room like, yes, he understands allergies. Yes, he knew he was allergic to them. Yes, he insisted on petting them. Yes, he had an oral allergic reaction to them because he was feeding them tiny pieces of gummy bear by pinching pieces off, then ate the rest of the gummy bear. Yes, I am questioning my assertion that he's very smart. When I was a senior in college, I was working a part-time job. They offered to make my current position full-time once I graduated. Before I got a chance to respond, my father found out and contacted my supervisor expressing concerns about the offer and the fact that I was still in college. How my father found out still boggles my mind, but when my supervisor told me that my dad called him, that was probably the most embarrassing thing either of my parents have ever done. I spoke to my parents a few months after it happened, and the only thing they considered wrong with the situation was that my supervisor told me my dad had called. Another story for your entertainment, when I was in 7th grade and went to a youth conference with my church. All the students got a free t-shirt and people were signing each other's names on them. This one girl signed mine, dotted the I with a heart and left her number. Well, I get home, my mum is doing my laundry and finds said number. Yep, you guessed it, my mother called the number and told the girl I needed to focus on my education and didn't have time for girls.
After I submitted a job application to a manager when I was 16, my mother barged up and started going on and on about how I was really shy and not much of a people person. Yeah, that's what a manager wants to hear about an applicant for a customer service job. What the frick was she planning on doing? I don't see how anyone could think that was a good idea at all. When I was 8, yes, 8 years old, I was obsessed with the new Charlie's Angels movies with Cameron Diaz, Lucy Liu, and Drew Barrymore. There's a scene in the movie where Drew is dressed in a patriotic jumpsuit at the NASCAR racetrack, and I really wanted to have that outfit for my Halloween costume. My mum is a costumer, and God bless her, made my costume from scratch to resemble Drew's jumpsuit. Well, as you can imagine, an 8-year-old girl does not have the cleavage to fill that jumpsuit out, so my mother decided to add a massive fake chest to this costume. I was mortified, and for some reason she could not take them out. So for Halloween that year, I had my arms crossed all of trick-or-treating. I still look back at the pictures from that year with deep anxiety. She Googles my boss's number, called him in his office, and asked him to put me on the phone. In his office. I was in a meeting with a client. I didn't answer her call on my cell phone in the middle of a workday. She wanted to gripe about my stepfather and wanted to talk now. No emergency or anything, she just wanted to talk and gave zero craps about the consequences of her actions, as per fricking usual. And that's the day my boss and pretty much the entire company lost respect for me, when the mum of their co-worker called him on his boss's office to talk about personal crap. A few months later, I resigned. There was nowhere to go in that place anymore. My mom did this to me when I was 18. She turned up at my job on my day off and talked to my boss about all her personal problems while being really clingy and trying to win his approval and start dating. I was on probation and the manager had no time for that crap, so I got a call to not come back. I had no idea that it had happened at the time, and it wasn't until a few weeks into looking for work that she decided to tell me about it. She had always done embarrassing crap like that my whole life, but that's when I realized she would mess up my chances at my livelihood and a decent career. So I never let her find out where I worked ever again. Not the name or anything that could be used to track it down. I wouldn't even tell my relatives specifics if I thought they might let it slip to her. I also didn't live with her, so she couldn't read my mail or pay stubs either. Is anyone else getting baffled at apparently how common it is for mums to completely ruin their children's ability to obtain and keep jobs? I can't believe that any of these people lacked the social intelligence to work out that it could only go negatively. Maybe not the most embarrassing, but certainly top 10. My mum went through this phase where she would talk during movies, specifically about what's going on in the movie. She was also terrible at paying attention to what was going on, so oftentimes what she was explaining was incorrect. In addition, she would try to talk over the movie. Mum would occasionally have to yell to make sure she was heard over the action scenes. Imagine, if you will, watching the aftermath of the stampede scene from The Lion King and the person next to you yelling, "Simba is sad because her dad died." My late mom got worse and worse about this as she got older, chatting through church services, movies, TV shows, using a loud voice in the otherwise quiet environments like public transportation, etc. Like, did part of that etiquette fall out of your brain at some point? You taught 2 kids how to act right and now you're off the hook? My sister's college graduation, my dad, my now husband, and I all ignored her, so she proceeded to talk everyone around us through the entire ceremony. Not horrible compared to a lot of these, but ugh. Unfortunately, this isn't a fun story. When I was 16, I had a big birthday party at our house. It was wonderful. I got to invite close to 30 friends, including new people from school. My dad made sure to have my favorite chocolate mousse cake as dessert. It turned into just a bunch of teenagers having a great time and talking. Then my mum was suddenly drunk. We never even noticed her drinking. She began microwaving slices of cheese on a paper plate and eating it with her fingers. Most of the kids didn't notice except for my BFF, who had some prior knowledge of her addiction. Kids began leaving, but not before my mum then began asking one of my friends, who was 15, about her intimate life and whether she was doing one of the other boys at the party. I thought I would die while standing and watching it happen. I had a male friend come over after school, and my best friend/neighbor was going to join soon after. They were dating at the time. Anyway, we get off the bus, started walking down the alleyway, and noticed my mum pulling out of the driveway. So we walked up to the car, and I asked where she's going. "Mum, we're heading to the grocery store. Do you need anything?" Me? No, I think I'm good, Mum." "Okay, well, I noticed the cucumber in your room was looking a bit soft, so I'll grab you another one." My friend looked like he was actually about to pee himself. Was there an actual cucumber, or was she just messing with you? Oh, she was definitely just fricking with me, but she did come home with a cucumber. I'm 21 and my mum still tries to order my steak for me. I ask for medium rare and she says,
"No, he'll have medium."
and I say, "No, medium rare," and she goes,
"Okay, whatever, that's fine."
My 350-pound mother streaked in front of my boyfriend and my friends for $100. I was only 16 and that image still haunts me. My butthole of a stepdad thought it'd be funny to give my alcoholic mother money to mortify me. When I was 10 or so, I was struggling with being too big for kids' clothes and too skinny for most juniors' clothes. I was trying on this dress with a mesh area around the neck in the department store dressing room, and it was so big on me that my bosom literally showed through the mesh part that was supposed to be around my collarbones. Kids that age are moody, so I just lost it in frustration and started crying. My mum was like,
"Oh, just let me see."
but I didn't want her to see because that meant showing the whole fitting area, my whole chest. Finally, I showed her, and when she saw how upset I was, instead of comforting me, she decided to mimic me, fake crying in my voice and saying,
"Oh my God, everyone can see my chest,"
and flashed everyone in the dressing room. Jeepers creepers, I came here for dad jokes and funny cringe moments, not actual childhood traumas. This kind of stuff will mess you up for a long time. Well, since we're committed now, here's another one. Sorry, this is a long one, but this will always stick with me until the day I die. So I really liked this one girl in high school, and I was always hoping we would talk someday, but I was a shy and quiet person. So one day we were all waiting around in the hall and she started going off about her ex-boyfriend and stuff, and I was just there listening and watching. She looks at me and randomly says,
"Hey, will you be my boyfriend?"
My butt clenched so tight, but I was able to smoothly say, sure, why not? And she just laughed and said okay. So later in the day, I somehow gained the courage to ask her for her number since I'm her new BF, and she smiled and said she wasn't being serious, but would actually like to talk to me. She says she's been wanting to, but I just never asked. Holy crap, my mind was going absolutely insane around this time, so I took her number and walked away without saying anything, because I'm me and will say some stupid crap to screw this up. Fast forward to that night, I'm at home and was going to grab the telephone to give her a call, and my mum asked what I'm doing. I let her know I was calling a friend to talk for a few minutes, but she just said no. Didn't give me a reason, just said no and took the phone back. Now, my mum was going through bad menopause at the time, so she was really mean, unstable, and emotional person for most of my teenage years. Anyway, I asked her about it and she said, I'm not allowed to talk on the phone, but I wasn't in trouble, just wasn't allowed on it. So I did what any teenager does and waited until she fell asleep to go get the phone. So I give her a call and she says she's happy to hear from me and that we can finally talk without our friends bothering us. We talk about the teachers, friends, our schedules, and her general life, etc. I'm really just agreeing and laughing at this point because I'm in utter shock that I'm actually speaking with her. Well, I'm guessing my voice or laughter carried over to my mum's room, and she bursts through the door so hard that I jump and drop the phone. Loud as any person can be, "Why the frick are you on the phone? I told your stupid butt you can't use the phone! Why are you on the fricking phone?" I was not expecting that outburst at all, so I just said I was talking to a friend and asking them for help with homework. She says, "I don't give a crap. I told you not to be on the phone, and now you're talking with your friends? Who the frick are you talking to so gosh damn late?" For some dumb reason, I gave her the girl's name and not like another male friend's. She was pretty much turning red at this point. "You don't listen to me and now you're on the phone with some B-word? I don't want no B-word calling our house. Hang up right now and tell that B-word don't ever call here again." She slams the door shut, and I look down to see that the phone is still connected. My heart dropped. She had heard the whole fricking thing. So I pick up the phone and sheepishly say, "Hello?" She only said, "Wow, that was, okay, see you later," and hung up. The next morning she avoided me like the plague. She never talked to me again after that, and we never spoke on the phone again. A part of my soul died that night, and I don't think it will ever be fully restored. Mine bought me a diary encouraging me to write in it. Later stole said diary, broke the lock off, forged a bunch of made-up crushes in there, and then read it aloud at the dinner table to humiliate me. My mother was not very kind. My parents, Southeast Asian, told one of my best friends, who's a girl and Caucasian, behind my back that if she was the same ethnicity as them, they would ask me to marry her. I'm sure they thought this would be very flattering. I found out later, and to this day, over a decade later, it still makes me cringe big time. A lot of people here are asking me if my parents are racist. They're not. This is a cultural thing. I've been married to my Caucasian wife for many years, and they love her. It was my 16th birthday, and my family went to a fancy Italian restaurant. The staff came over to sing happy birthday to me, and my dad started singing along loudly in a bad Italian opera kind of accent.
We're not Italian. The staff was so stunned and they just stopped singing. The other customers around us laughed and applauded and the staff just walked away. I was mortified. When I was young, we had a pajama day at school, but I always just wore my boxers to sleep. Well, obviously, a kid can't show up to school in just underwear, but I was a little too dumb to understand that. Why my mum allowed me to go and even drove me there, I have no idea. It was the most embarrassing day of my life, and the school had to call my mum to come pick me up halfway through the day. I was in elementary school, but I can't remember if it was first or second grade. And the school didn't notice or care until halfway because I was eating lunch in the cafeteria and kids were staring at me. Some adult must have noticed them. I wore C-cup bras when I was 11 years old. My mum loved to loudly talk about them to anyone who would listen. Yeah, she's only 11. You wouldn't think it from the way she's filled out up top. Then I'd start crying from the humiliation and she'd tell me to lighten up. Seriously, half of these deserve a place in a video I did the other week. What's something harmless your parents did to you as a kid that really screwed you up as an adult? Some of these are equally as traumatizing. Telling everybody at Thanksgiving dinner at her boyfriend's house about my tween bout with anorexia. I didn't want to be there in the first place, and she just kept going on and on about how I had carrots for dinner for a year until I had to shout at her to stop. To her credit, she was immediately embarrassed when she realized what she was doing, and she apologized profusely. I was 13 and waiting for a ride with my sister and parents at Dollywood. Across the way, two very pretty girls about my age were smiling at me. I smiled back and acted all cool because I was a skater boy with skater hair, and my Vision streetwear and some shirt with a skull on it or something. It was working too. The girls whispered to each other and giggled, and one even waved at me. Then my mum reached her damn hand to my face and popped a pimple right there in public. The girls were aghast, I was humiliated, and I have never forgiven her. Oh, I have a Dollywood story too. We were with a church group and my parents were along with us because they wanted to extend our family vacation in the area. My dad was walking around with us and I'd wanted to ride a ride. I couldn't find him after the ride, so I headed up to the front of the organized meeting place like we'd been told. My parents and most of the church group were there. My mom starts yelling at me for running off and spanks me in front of everyone. I was 13. When I was 5 or so, my preschool did a play based on Noah's Ark. It was a pre-K attached to a church. We were instructed that our costumes were supposed to be raincoats, rain boots, or umbrellas. I didn't have any of those things but begged my dad to get me at least one of them so I'd fit in and follow the guidelines. Fast forward, the night of the play, I'm frantically scanning the audience because my dad is always late. He finally shows up and brings me a life jacket. I had to stand up there with all the kids in their little raincoats in a life jacket. I was really embarrassed. Dad's defense was that I was the only kid who would have survived the flood. I can laugh now, but I sure wasn't laughing then. My father was a huge racist and used pejorative terms to describe other people. I knew about the words for African Americans, Chinese people, and Japanese people, so I never said them. Little me didn't know about the other words. I used one in class to answer a question my history teacher asked, and he was properly horrified. I was immediately removed from class and my confused butt was grilled for hours about my word usage. I finally said I didn't know what I did wrong. My dad says it all the time to describe people from that country. They called my mum and I had to go home. There was a shouting match between my parents and my dad's mother that night and I was beaten soundly by my father. Mum made me call my 8th grade social studies teacher at home to ask if I could use him as a job reference. He lived with his parents still, and I asked for him by first name. He waited for me at my locker the next day to tell me to never phone his house again, parents' house, and never call him by his first name again. Didn't get the job either. Mum denies this ever happened and claims she would never demand I do something so strange. Don't you hate it when your parents become revisionist historians? I came home from school with head lice. Instead of telling the teacher, who would send a letter home to everyone without it specifically naming which child they noticed had lice, my mother rang every person in my class that she had the phone number of. She would have a chat with the parent, all, "Yeah, she has head lice, so you need to check your kid." I probably got it from someone in my class, and the whole class likely already had lice, but kids don't realize that, so the whole class were calling me dirty and saying that I'd infected them. It was horrible. I was hysterically crying while she called people. I didn't expect so many people to read this, so to address the concerns, she never did anything bad ever in my life except this, and she kept saying, "Don't be stupid, I'm just telling their mothers so they can sort it," and presumably didn't expect them to tell their 7 or 8-year-olds who it was. Clearly someone did because the whole class knew it was just me by the next day.
Seems there's a lot of comments below with similar stories of adults having no clue how oddly shameful it is to have lice when you're little, which sucks, but kids will jump on anything to be mean sometimes. I have aggressive Crohn's that started showing up around 8th grade. My mum took me to all of my doctor appointments, which were all pretty embarrassing because no teenage boy wants their mum involved in their butt-related illness. One particular visit, we were about halfway through the appointment when she whipped out a Cool Whip tub. Turns out the following night I used the bathroom and it didn't all go down, so she thought it would be helpful to load up that in our poor people Tupperware and haul it into the doctor so he could look over it. He had the confused, "What am I supposed to do with poop in a Cool Whip tub?" face for a good 5 to 10 seconds, then politely dismissed it. Who would have thought there isn't any medical knowledge to be gained from fishing poop out of the toilet, refrigerating it overnight, and schlepping it up for an office visit? When I was a senior in high school, I had left the lights on in my truck all day and had to call my dad to come and jumpstart my car. Now, my father is 6'1" and has a very large belly. Mother Fricker rolls up in cloth shorts and no shirt to jumpstart my car. Then there was a time a few years earlier that my mother had him sent up to school to give me a sandwich before a football game. The man's boxers were longer than his shorts. He's always there for you when you frick up though, isn't he? He'd give you the shirt off his back if he was wearing one. This is actually something people have said about him.
Just saw a mother walk into a classroom with a handheld radiation meter and proceed to tell the teacher that little Billy needs to sit in the back corner of the classroom because of the toxic school Wi-Fi radiation. What other insane things have you seen/heard of that these helicopter moms do? Joke's on her when I tell her that visible light is also quote-unquote toxic radiation. Maybe she'll go back to whatever cave she crawled out of, this time with their lights turned out. What I don't get here is that mom was perfectly happy with other children getting killed by the supposedly lethal radiation. Surely, if she was so confident it was toxic, she would have nobly saved the whole class by getting them out of there. But I guess she believes Wi-Fi is toxic, so logic should not be expected. I work in HR at a large telecommunications company. We usually sit in the conference room and can see/hear the interview candidates while they are waiting in the lobby. This poor guy was probably 19 or 20, and his mother wanted to go into the interview with him. We actually had to ask her to wait outside the lobby because even after being asked to sit down, she said it was her, quote, right to be in there. WTF? Guy didn't end up getting the job, and she later called and asked where she could send an appeal letter. Wish I had saved that letter. It was intense. I made a really great friend in high school. He and I were as thick as thieves. Early on in the friendship, my parents took us to a movie. I don't remember the movie, but the start of it got delayed by technical difficulties by about 20 minutes. My parents called from their cell to let my friend's mother know, but only got the voicemail. Thinking that would suffice, we all proceeded to have a good time. Fast forward to the end of the movie, my mom turns her cell phone on and discovers her voicemail box is suddenly full. 20, I believe, was her limit. All of them were my friend's mother calling, pleading for us to return her son, and she would pay any amount we demanded, and that if we called back soon, she wouldn't go to the police. She literally had thought we kidnapped him. Suffice to say, when we got home only 20 minutes later than planned, the conversation was rather awkward. My dad figured out exactly how long it took to walk home from school. As in, literally walked it himself, and then gave me exactly that long to get home every day. If I was more than 5 minutes late, I got a beating for, quote, screwing around. Then they got mad that I had no friends, and after a protracted argument and fight, I got an extra 15 minutes to make friends after school. That winter, I got in a snowball fight and was having fun and didn't realize I'd gone a little too long. So dear old dad drove to my school and started wandering around, bellowing my name until he found me. That was a blast. I believe this is the year after he stood in front of my entire class and told them to start being nice to me. I'm so glad I change schools every year. That sucks. I know the feeling though. My friends almost never wanted to come to my house, and I pretty much blame it on my folks. My dad was just an embarrassment, blew up on me for having friends over once, and told me I couldn't have anyone in the house unless I asked. This was in front of my friends, whom I had known for years and whom were also let in my house by my mother right before she went to work. Then there were 2 instances where I asked if some friends could spend the night. Got what was basically a yes, and then they ended up having to leave because my mother said that since she didn't talk to their parents, again, the first instance where people I had known for years, it would be considered kidnapping. Then the second time, my dad barged into the room, screamed at me, and called my friends bums to their faces, telling them they had to leave. Needless to say, I didn't have many visitors over, and my social life was almost non-existent. There was a girl in my 5th grade class whose mother would take an hour out of her day to come supervise recess. Every 5 minutes, she'd blow a whistle and go, "Emmy, it's time for your shade break." And, just like clockwork, Emmy would have to go sit in the shade for 5 minutes. This crap got really annoying when we would play team sports. No one wanted Emmy on their team. Went to a play group for children with special needs involved with infant development. Talked to a mom after I noticed that she wouldn't let her son off the mat he was playing on, chit-chatting, all the while she was stopping her kid from going off the mat. When I said something along the lines of, "Wow, your son really wants off that mat," she replied deadpan with, "Well, he was a preemie, so I got to protect him from the world." My daughter is blind, has albinism and nystagmus. She was rolling, yelping, and climbing up everything like a spider monkey. Ugh. When I worked at a coffee shop with the most helium-like, whiny freaking voice imaginable, came and ordered a 7-step customized drink and threw a fit when we just asked her to repeat it.
"Oh no! Am I the bad guy? I'm sorry! I thought you'd be able to speak English!"
Then she goes, in the same whiny, begging voice,
"Can my son have a job?"
I hand her a job application.
"He already sent one in! Can you just hire him? Hey! I don't want whipped cream on that!" "So, can he have a job?"
I tell her if he's sent an application, he'll get a call when the manager looks through the stack. We had like 20 applications at any given point.
So he's just gonna be one in the pile? Yeah, that's not gonna work. He's a great kid. Just freaking hire him.
Just to get rid of her, I wrote down her son's name and say I'll look into it. I hand her her drink and she leaves. My manager, who heard her screeching voice from the back room, immediately calls me over to see that kid's name. He digs through the pile of applications and immediately shreds the kid's application. His only words, "If we hire him, his mother is going to be here all the time." I once interviewed someone for an entry-level job. The next day, I got a follow-up call from his mother. This kid had not made the cut. He didn't interview confidently and didn't enunciate very well. Not good for a call center job. But I hadn't passed that on to HR yet. I told this woman a little white lie though. I informed her that he had been in the running, but since he can't be counted on to do his own follow-up, he's clearly not the kind of employee I want. When I was in high school, I would go teach French to elementary school children with a few friends of mine. I used to do magic tricks for the kids because they would go absolutely ape and they all loved it. One day I was teaching them, and I told them I had a special trick. I did the Balducci levitation for them, and they went ballistic. Afterwards, the teacher pulls me aside and sternly tells me I'm lucky she didn't throw me out of the classroom because one of the students who happened to be absent that day is, and I quote, anti-Wiccan and isn't allowed to view, quote, black magic. Had a helicopter mom who became one of the middle school's lunch monitors in order to help her kid make more friends. She would carry around candy and would only give it out to people that were friends of her child, literally denying others if she didn't know them. Ah yes, bribery to make friends. That's surely a good way to show your kids. You haven't seen anything until you've seen helicopter hockey parents. They don't only hover over their kids, they encourage horrible sportsmanship. A few years ago, when my goalie brother was playing Squirt AA, so about age 9 to 10, the opposing team equipped themselves with the age-old strategy of run the goalie. The coaches were in on this. The parents cheered bloodthirstily whenever these little jerks ran into my brother, and they kept this up more than they attempted to score. My brother had had enough. Poor kid snapped and walloped the next boy who skidded into his crease, the net area, which was totally justifiable by that point. This redneck-looking woman and her husband immediately got up, started screeching about their poor precious Joey and get that goalie out of there, ref. Eventually, their whole cheering system was on their feet and yelling out obscene stuff about taking my brother out to 10-year-olds. They all got escorted out by security. You cannot make this crap up. I have a cousin who lives in northern Michigan where youth hockey is a very big deal. My cousin was voted president of the league one year, and his first priority was to get the parents to only encourage good sportsmanship and friendly competition. He sent out over a dozen letters before the season even started to the parents of players throughout the league, stating that any parents seen shouting profanity, encouraging violence, or cheating, etc., would be permanently banned from all future games. The first round of the season starts, and it was a disaster. Parents were worse than usual, and several people were arrested at different games for fighting in the stands. Needless to say, the letters hadn't worked. So, my cousin decides to hold a meeting for players and coaches only to discuss the problem. After having the police forcibly vacate a few parents who didn't agree with the quote, players and coaches only aspect of the meeting, he asked the players what they wanted to do. Most of the players actually said they didn't want their parents to come to games. Most of them weren't trying to go pro. They just enjoyed playing hockey and their parents were ruining it for them. So, they took a vote at the meeting, and my cousin sent out one last letter that simply said parents/step-parents/foster parents/legal guardians, etc. were no longer allowed at official league games. If a parent was spotted, that team would forfeit the game. If they came a second time, that team forfeit the season. My cousin got some death threats, but nothing ever came of it. We decided to teach the Hunger Games in English last year. I had a few parents raise concerns because they had heard a few rumors, but it was nothing a quick conference and a little reassuring couldn't fix. Until Mrs. Bickerstaff happened. Now, Mrs. Bickerstaff had an inflated sense of self-importance to begin with. A housewife who, with complete seriousness, signs her emails Mrs. Nolanda Charlene Bickerstaff Esquire type of self-important. She not only pitched the biggest of fits about not allowing her son to read it, we offered an alternative to kids whose parents put their foot down and said no, but embarked on a 6-month campaign to get the school shut down unless we pulled the book from curriculum for everyone. She disenrolled her son, threatened to sue us for the cost of sending him to an expensive private school, and called every parent in the school to try to get them to do the same. When she didn't have any success with that, she went to the local news and told them what was going on. What resulted was a flattering news story that reported our high test scores and innovative approach to learning. We're a charter school. I should mention that she didn't read the book. Alrighty, I have a few. I worked at Whole Foods, and that is ground zero for lunatic parents. Number 1. There was the, quote, nutritionist and her mom that didn't want anything scanned because of the, quote, radiation. Number 2. One lady was going on and on about how her son was corn-free, egg-free, dairy-free, and soy-free because that's what her chiropractor told her to do. I wanted to apologize to that kid so bad. Number 3. When I worked at a cooking store, like Williams-Sonoma, I had a lady come in with her tween-age kids trying to find glass baking dishes because, quote, metal is bad for you. I suggested silicone, and she said that was worse. So I suggested parchment paper, but she already used that. I had a hard time holding back the massive smile when I told her that parchment has silicone in it. Every time she would go off on something, her kids would just roll their eyes. Didn't see it personally, but a few years ago there was an article in my local newspaper about a mother cleaning the vegetables she was cooking for her family in bleach. Didn't realize she was doing anything wrong until one of her children nearly died. I was not allowed to walk to school by myself even though it was literally 1 block away from my house because my mom said I would get forced upon. I was in junior high. I was never allowed to be unattended and was not allowed to go to friends' houses because my parents did not trust other parents. This extended all the way through high school until I started, quote, acting out, and they sent me to a lockdown mental health treatment facility. My childhood was painfully lonely, to say the least. I was volunteering for this thing 2 years ago where we helped freshmen haul their stuff, mostly tampons and televisions, into the dorms. One mom came at the end of the day and flipped her lid because her daughter's roommates already divided up the space, she was last to get there, and, oh yes, because her daughter didn't get the dorm with the swimming pool. Yes, her daughter had to change dorms because it was too dang hard to walk to the 2 buildings in a 50-foot radius to use the swimming pool. Her daughter was really chill though. Let's hope she stays that way. Pro tip for younger Redditors, if you're going to bring your parents with you into an admissions interview for a graduate program, it won't hurt your chances of getting in, but it will make you the laughingstock of the admissions department for the day. My brother is an admissions counselor at a major American university for one of their graduate schools. He told me that it's not an uncommon thing these days for helicopter parents to attend their children's admissions interviews with them. These are people in their 20s taking their parents with them to admissions interviews for graduate school. My jaw dropped when I heard this. We know them as umbrella parents because they cover you from everything. Poncho parents are more extreme. They're the parents that won't allow computer access without them right there, put huge restrictions on TV, G or PG, kids like 16, won't allow any video games, etc. Anyways, a Poncho parent I know managed to keep her 16-year-old son under the delusion that girls are gross and have cooties. My cousin has a helicopter mom, very controlling and dominant. Kate never got to think for herself, never had to learn discipline, financial or personal. She never had to. Her mom did it all for her. When Kate finally got into university and was away from her mother for the first time in her life, Kate went completely off the rails, since to all extents she was an 18-year-old with the maturity of an 8-year-old. She would struggle to fill out basic paperwork and forms for the class, since she'd had no experience of it. Worst of all was that she had no experience of the opposite sex, since she'd been sheltered all her life, and so she got taken advantage of frequently. What was even more stupid was that her mom still to this day does not see where she went wrong. She can't realize or admit that she weakened her child by removing life opportunities that strengthen a personality. In high school, I was friends with this girl we'll call Judy. Judy's mom was really strict/overprotective, and she could never go anywhere with us. And when she did, she'd inevitably end up grounded. She could never hang out, and she wasn't allowed to have friends over very often. Once when I was at her house, she got grounded for yelling at the dog. This led to a rebellion where Judy just stopped doing anything her mom told her. She started drinking heavily whenever she could, and she also smoked weed and did whatever pills or drugs people had. She always had to babysit her if she came out with us. This went on for a few months, and she met this guy. We'll call him Tom. He was about 25, and the kind of dude that's every parent's worst fear. Judy came from a good upper-middle-class family. Her dad was a dentist, that sort of thing. Tom was a 25-year-old burnout, and he was on house arrest when Judy met him. It was love at first sight for her, even though we all tried to talk her out of it. She started hanging out at Tom's house anytime she could. She'd skip school to go over there, sneak out of the house at night, that sort of thing. Well, it's no surprise what happened next. Judy got pregnant. She was 8 months along at our high school graduation and married Tom and had the baby shortly thereafter. Moral of the story, don't be a ridiculously strict parent because your child will rebel and bad things will happen. P.S. The same exact thing happened to Judy's sisters when they got older. Sad stuff. Edited to update. Judy and Tom stayed married for 10 plus years. I don't keep up with her, but from what I've heard, she went on to become a hairdresser. Tom stayed out of trouble and the kid turned out okay. He'll be 20 now. Dang, that makes me feel kinda old. I had a friend, Christina, whose mom was like that but more crazy. She had divorced parents who split custody pretty evenly. When she was with her dad, things were good, but when she was with her mother, if her mother ever saw her talking to a boy, even a male cashier at a store, she was grounded. She wasn't allowed to have friends over, and she wasn't allowed to go out anywhere besides school without her mom. Even when she was staying with her father, she would get called at least once an hour. Needless to say, she rebelled. Girl was a notorious nympho and a bit of an exhibitionist. She would flash cars, make out with anyone at the drop of a hat, and pleasure her boyfriends in public spaces. I refused to go to a movie theater with her because of how she would defile the place. Thankfully, she was smart enough to use protection and wasn't interested in drugs. Hilariously, when her mother met me, she decided on the spot that I wasn't allowed to be her friend because I was such a bad influence. Apart from my looks at the time, I was a poser punk/goth/whatever girl. I was perfect. I didn't do drugs, had decent grades, I was the only one of our friends involved with church and volunteering, and I was waiting for marriage before giving up my V-card. This woman met me at a school event, and because I was wearing a hoodie during the summer, she accused me of being a cutter and drug dealer in front of my own mother, and then proceeded to shame my mother for allowing me to have a boyfriend. My mom even felt sorry for her daughter. Yeah, this goes without saying, but you can't prepare your child for the world if you're their only world. Kids are gonna screw up, act out, argue with you, all that stuff. That doesn't make them bad people and need a constant supervision. If anything, that makes it worse because you're judging their every move. Paranoia is contagious. Instead, learn to accommodate their needs, but talk with them about what they want. Now, if they want to do hard drugs, that's probably not gonna end well, but you can be a parent without being a bodyguard. I wish I had seen this thread earlier, but here goes. I'm a preschool teacher for ages 3 to 4 years old. One day, one of my girls, fake name Abby, is playing with, fake name, Becky's security blanket during free time. Becky wants her blanket back, so she asks Abby to get off. Abby refuses, so Becky pulls the blanket from under her and Abby cries. I tell Abby that she needs to listen to what Becky is saying and respect her friend's belongings. I also tell Becky that next time, instead of pulling the blanket from under Abby, she should just come tell a teacher. Maybe 5 minutes later, while I'm passing out snacks, Abby flips into a crazy rage and runs towards Becky, tackles her, and takes a huge bite out of her shoe. Plastic literally came off. I pull Abby off and try as calmly as I can to ask her why the heck she attacked Becky. Basically, it was revenge for getting her in trouble and taking the blanket away from her. Now, here's the mother part. I write an incident report telling both parents what happened, and, of course, I put Abby in the thinking chair for such an outrageous attack and call her mom, leaving a message and whatnot. But the next day, Abby's mom comes in and finds the child that got bitten, Becky, and tells her that if she hadn't yanked the blanket out from under Abby, maybe she wouldn't have attacked you. Of course, I asked the parent to leave immediately and to not speak to the children, that Abby was the one who attacked out of spite, and that her child's reaction was not an appropriate one that could be excused in my classroom. The mom got so mad at me for defending Becky, a 3-year-old, that she reported me to my supervisor for being unprofessional. I still have my job, but mom withdrew her child. But seriously?
People who quit their jobs on the first day, what was your "I'm out of here" moment? I used to work at a craft store as a cashier, but quit when I moved. Ended up going back a couple of years later to make some extra cash, but this time in the framing department. During the interview, they swore up and down I would only ever be a backup cashier because I refused to have a full cashier shift. First shift after the interview was listed as framing, but I'm put on cash and told that actually most of my shifts would be cash since they'd found someone else for framing. I spent the next 6 hours giving everyone who came to my register 20% off everything and then never went back. Not technically first day, but second day. When I was 20 or so, I got hired to be a temporary floor member for Forever 21 during the holiday season. My training started a week before Black Friday, so the store was already kind of in chaos. On my first day of training, I walked in and the floor manager gave all the new hires a tour, showing us the facility and layout of the store. After this, I was assigned to a veteran floor member to shadow and get an idea of what my job was and what my duties would be. As soon as I was assigned, the manager dipped, never to be seen again. An hour and a half into my shift, my shadowee got an emergency family call and had to take off for a week. When this happened, I found some other floor manager and explained the situation and asked them who else I would shadow. The manager's response was, "Just do what you can by yourself, you'll be fine, everyone else is busy." Figured we'll be okay, so I'll try. I don't know if any of you have shopped in the women's section of Forever 21, but during seasonal sales they'll have multiple articles of clothing that all look exactly the same, with slight differences. Example, a white cardigan with 4 buttons that looked literally the same as a white cardigan with 5 buttons. The best part was these different items were often placed in completely separate parts of the store, and it was the job of the dressing room to return the unpurchased items to the correct section so the employees could put them back on the shelves. Well, these employees fricking sucked, and I didn't know if they were part of my section or not, so I'd spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to find where they'd go before realizing, wait, this isn't even my section. I've checked literally every rack. So I'd put it back on the sorting rack and moved to the next item. More than 50% of the stuff I was told to reshelf wasn't my section. I just did as best as I could and got ready for my next miserable day. The next day I come in and the store manager pulls me to her office and told me how slow I was the day before, and if I want to keep working there, I need to be very fast. I explained my lack of training and unfamiliarity with the store, and she told me if I didn't know where the clothes were in sections, I should come in on my free time and memorize where stuff was at. I spent the rest of my shift putting clothes in random fricking places, then never came in for a third shift. Frick that place and frick their management. Nothing as satisfying as hearing a person do what we've all wanted to do at times, flipping off the manager for their unreasonable bullcrap and leaving. My first internship was at a Brazilian teen detention center. It's akin to a prison, but Brazilian law has some distinctions between crimes committed while as an adult or a teenager. Teens go through socio-educational measures. I was walking through a courtyard with my supervisor when some doctors came running, flailing their arms and screaming while officers came running from the opposite direction. I get pulled by my supervisor who just tells me to run back to our office. These teens, as young as 12, had escaped their block. A few minutes later, an officer comes knocking on doors and the officers and yelling for everyone to run outside because a fire had broken out. Some of the teens had set mattresses on fire in their cells. I didn't really nope out, my teacher did. She hadn't even been there that day, so I was forced by the university to choose another place to intern at. Oh well. I was 17 and working precast concrete. Refused to use a rusted-to-crap ladder. Supervisor called me a wuss, got up 7 rungs before his foot went through a rung, heard his foot snap as he fell. I called an ambulance and walked to my car in the parking lot. Wasn't exactly the first day, but I didn't show up after the second shift. It was rather a popular cafe chain in my country. I was hired to work in the kitchen as a cook along with another senior cook. Let's put aside the fact that I had zero cooking knowledge whatsoever. The senior cook was leaving the kitchen every 5 minutes to smoke. I was just there alone, in the kitchen. Orders are printing fast and I'm standing there not sure what to do first. And the waitress comes over yelling at me to cook stuff I don't have any business cooking, definitely not on my own. Later on, the senior cook told me they had at least 2 rats running around the kitchen. Showed me they pooped on a plate. I never came back, and I'm glad the place got shut down. On the first day of working at Amazon warehouses, the managers broke down to everyone how a 15-minute break works there. Walking to the bathroom is 2.5 minutes, 10 minutes of actual break, and then 2.5 minutes to go back to your stations. It took me 2.5 minutes to walk to my car, and I took a forever break. Summer job working for a landscape architect. Got to the job site and he asked me to dig a hole in some rocky dirt. I asked for a shovel. He didn't have one. I asked for a hand spade. He didn't have one either. He told me to just dig a hole with my bare hands and then drove off to another site, leaving me completely alone. I dug for a little bit and then said, "Frick this," and left. Had the job specified that I needed to supply my own tools, I could have, but it didn't, and I wasn't going to work for someone that expected folk to dig through hard, rocky soil with their hands. Sounds like he sucks at communicating. Those bosses are the worst. I'd say he's got bigger fish to fry than communication. Guy runs a hole-digging business with no shovels. I noped out of an interview one time, thanked them at the end and said it wasn't for me. Those interviewing, management-level folks, started arguing with each other in front of me during the interview. I figured if this is the vibe at the management level, then I sure as heck don't want to be your employee. Answered an ad in the paper, this was in the mid-90s, for what seemed to be an office job making sales calls when I was in college. Did a phone interview and was called back for an in-person interview. When I go to the interview, I'm led into a room with about 50 other people and a small stage at the front of the room. We're all somewhat confused as to what's going on. Finally, a guy gets on the stage and informs us that we've been selected for the opportunity to sell Cutco. Me and 2/3 of the rest stood up and walked out. Anytime I see more than a dozen people for a job interview, I just nope the frick right out. If it's not door-to-door sales paid only on commission, it's some multi-level marketing crap. I wish some job interviews would be more forthcoming about that. Some places have outright lied to me. Legitimate response. I think that last person's rule about the number of applicants is a fairly good one to go by. I just wish I'd walked away from my first bullcrap door-to-door job. I was a cashier at Lowe's during college for less than a full day. I made it through the multiple-day training, but there was so much stupid crap going on, I almost thought I was on a hidden camera show. All the employees complained about how hard they had to work while simultaneously not getting enough hours. Nobody understood why they were hiring like 4 new people. I was one of those 4. Turns out it's because they were progressing through an indecent conduct complaint that required restructuring of the store and firing some of the employees. This was known to HR and explained to new hires, against company policy, but it wasn't known to the employees. Apparently some of whom still worked there, including the fricking person doing the training. She was really inappropriate and said not to worry about the indecent conduct stuff and that everything would go back to normal soon enough and that we wouldn't have to be so uptight. They fired her the day before I started, along with one of the cashiers who trained me. She also offered me terrible guidance for the application process. They were looking for a part-time help, and 2 of the 3 days they needed help on, I had off from school. I told them I couldn't work nights most nights, but if they needed daytime help, it had to be on one of those days. She said if I was too restrictive, they wouldn't keep me on, and lied to my boss about my availability to make me even more attractive than I already was. Wink! And told me to schmooze them a bit and I'd make it further. She said in the end it wouldn't impact anything and I'd get those days. My first week's schedule, I was working mornings every day that I was in school and I wasn't given any hours on my days off. Aside from the fact that I was given 2 times the hours the position called for, when other employees were shorted, my work schedule was literally impossible to consolidate with my school schedule. I only went to work on my first day to tell them that I was quitting and that their application process was a fricking mess. They couldn't figure out how so much went wrong, and then they asked who trained me and everything made sense. They thanked me for at least showing up to quit, unlike the other 3 they hired, who had just stopped returning their calls and no-showed on their first days. A long time ago, not long after getting my papers as a chef, I had an interview at a hotel for a position in the kitchen. The executive chef and I chatted in his office for about 20 minutes. At the time, I remember him coming off as very arrogant, which is quite common in this field. I didn't think much of it at the time, as the pay was decent and the shift was what I wanted. As I was leaving his office, I turned to leave through the dining room, the way I'd come, which was closed at the time. It was another hour or so before service started, and he says to me, "No, not that way. Go through the kitchen. You're not good enough to go through the dining room." I was so surprised by what he said. I just did what he asked without a word. Later on, after I'd got home, I phoned him up and said that after having a close look, I decided that his menu wasn't good enough and that I wouldn't be accepting his offer. Restaurant. Swept under my station when we were closing. Giant brown pile came out with the broom from under the lowboy fridge. The pile then began to scatter. It was hundreds of roaches. Never returned. My first ever job. I was 13 and would be delivering phone books from the back of a van through people's letterboxes. So I'd be in the back of the van with the phone books, and there was an older guy slowly driving while I went back and forth to the van/houses with the books. At one point, the van was getting empty, so there was more space to move around, and we'd finished the delivery in the streets that we were paid to deliver in, and he drove to another. While driving there, he drove, let's say, aggressively, and I fell inside the back where the books were. I wasn't sitting in a seat as the van had no seats in the back. As I put my hand out to steady myself, I accidentally laid it across a portable radio that had its antenna extended, but the antenna was also broken halfway and razor sharp. I sliced the palm of my hand clean open 3 to 4 inches. I can only describe what I saw as gruesome. I said to pull the van over and I needed help. He saw my hand and just threw me a plastic bag, the kind you'd get at a supermarket, and told me to wrap my hand in it. Then continued with the deliveries. At least he delivered the remaining books by himself. I should have been taken to a hospital or at least home to my parents, and I quit after that and never showed up again. As you can imagine, my parents were quite angry at him. Well, as awful as my first after-school delivery job was, it wasn't that bad, and you have my sympathy. At least when I got injured, they would just schedule a later delivery for me. I got hired at a very small knockoff dollar store in an old, failing mall. The owner was foreign with a very thick accent. He told me I'd get $6 an hour, but neglected to mention it was under the table. I spent about an hour stocking the very overly cluttered shelves before I was told to get more chips out of the back storage area. I walked back there and there's about a dozen men sitting on boxes all crammed into a small back room. I asked where the chips were and these guys all glared at me. They started speaking in another language and rapidly motioned towards me. Then one guy got up and asked what I needed. I told him I was supposed to get a box of chips, and he got a box out of the pile and handed it to me. The entire time, these guys are all staring at me. Everything back there looked shady as all hell, and it was very uncomfortable. A while later, I had to use the restroom, which was also in the back. These guys all just wordlessly glared at me while I went into the woman's restroom. While I was in the restroom, someone tried to open the door. I was the only woman there. The owner told me he wanted me to come back that night late in the evening well after the mall closed. I didn't show up. I came in the next morning and lied about why I couldn't work there. He still gave me the few bucks from what little time I did work. I don't know what in the heck that guy had going on there, and I didn't want to find out. Restaurant line chef. Worked a 12-hour shift and was given 2 breaks of about 10 to 15 minutes each. Burned my hand numerous times because they gave me plates that came right from the oven, and never said a word. End of the shift, I told the head chef I was done. He called me soft and said I was the 3rd person to quit on him after a day. I said, maybe it's the way you treat people. Funny how people think it's not their problem when many people quit working with them. Restaurant owners never seem to get this. I was a hostess at a restaurant like this for about a year. We could never hold on to the kitchen staff because they were worked to the bone and barely paid. It affected the whole restaurant. Dishwashers were either swamped or had nothing to do because the tickets were too backed up. Busboys were the same. The servers got crap tips because the food was so slow and the managers were constantly comping food and getting chewed out about long waiting times. And even the hosts had long waits and sections full of empty tables we couldn't sit because we were trying to let the kitchen catch up. Then the idiot owner would come in, sit everyone on my list, and go yell at the kitchen for being slow. We were lucky if new guys lasted a week back then. Restaurant work is a joke. I've been in New York City restaurants on and off for about 10 years. They all turn to crap or just start as bullcrap right from the get-go. My last job was as a sous chef. I'll never work the line again. 2 times. Once I applied for and got a telemarketing job. I didn't know what it entailed. After an hour, I knew it was a terrible fit. Auto-dialing people during their dinners, trying to sell them stuff they didn't want, and reading a horrible script while sitting in a soulless grey cubicle. I got up, went to the manager, apologized, and said it wasn't a good fit for me. He seemed understanding. Another time, I attended a Make Easy Money at This Job seminar, and turns out it was selling knives door to door. I don't know if I technically quit or just noped out at the end of it. I answered an ad for a babysitting job. I was already working on a casual basis, but it was sporadic, so I thought some after-hours babysitting would be welcome extra cash. The couple were both in the military and proceeded to tell me that I would be staying in the spare room and looking after their 6-month-old child around the clock, as well as doing the housework. I would have 1 day off every 2 weeks. They said it's cash in hand, so I could sign on to the dole, unemployment benefit, to make up the rest of the money. I left on the spot. They wanted a live-in housemaid and a nanny, not a babysitter, and they were not able to pay for one. Why they thought it was basically up to me to illegally collect the dole and subsidize them, I don't know. Applied for a job at my longtime favorite restaurant, celebrated my birthday there every year. Owner asks me to come in for basically a tryout, as I communicated I was looking at other job possibilities as well. I come in and they just stick me on dishwasher for an hour. No biggie. Then the dishwasher doesn't show up, so the kitchen manager asks me to stay on their lunch rush. Says I'll get paid for the hours. I do. Kitchen staff was nice, so I was happy to help out, even though I figured I'd be taking a different job. I fill out a time card at the end of the shift and tell the manager I probably wouldn't be back. He understands and thanks me for the help. Fast forward a couple of weeks and he tells me to email the owner after I ask him if I should pick up my measly paycheck. I do, and she basically tells me to frick off over text. Tells me it was staging, and that she had told me I wouldn't be paid. I respond that I understand, but that I stayed for an extra 3 hours which I was told I'd be paid for. She stops responding, and I decide I want to be petty over the $40, so I get the state labor department involved. Dude goes in there and makes her pay me for the hours, including the first staging hour. Couple weeks later I got my $40, never went back to that restaurant. In hindsight, I'm very glad I did this, and sharing the story with others in my city, I learned this practice was very common with local restaurants. Hopefully others learn to stand up for their labor too from my small experience. Secondly, this restaurant closed down a couple of weeks after I got that paycheck. The owner made a long-winded complaint on the Facebook page about how the food culture had changed in the city and her restaurant didn't fit in anymore. Total bullcrap, they were always popular. Most people theorized the terrible mismanagement and employee abuse caught up to her. It's interesting. This story is from about 5 years ago, and I stopped my long restaurant career about 7 years ago. I wonder if there's been any significant transformation in restaurant culture, or if it's still the same exploitative crap at different date. Maybe you modern waiters and chefs can let me know in the comments. More hospo stories to follow. I was a waitress, the only waitress at a just-opened diner. The boss didn't have me sign any paperwork, everything was under the table. But that wasn't what made me quit at the end of the night. In order to get me where he wanted me to go, he would pinch my skirt at the upper thigh, not quite the butt, but very close, and pull me around like it was a leash. Needed me in the kitchen? Rather than call me, he would come out, pinch my skirt, and pull me to the kitchen. Needed me at the cash machine? Again, come over to wherever I was. Didn't matter if I was serving a customer, and he would grab my skirt to pull me. That act, in itself, made some customers uncomfortable. Mind you, one couple left almost 50% tip at the end, but I think it was more out of pity and embarrassment on my behalf. I was supposed to come in the next day, but I called that night and said the job wasn't for me. I came in a couple of days later to turn in my apron, and he just took a wad of cash out of his pocket and paid me then and there. God, he was creepy. I think it was a smart move to quit. When the microwave in the lunchroom was coin activated. This is like when I made my patrons pay money to use the bathrooms at my roller coaster park when the ticket prices weren't cutting it. Amazing move. Had an orientation for an alarm company. Next day, the manager calls and says don't worry about going into the office and to meet at Planet Hollywood. They like to get to know the employees better over lunch. Next day, I go into the office and another employee who I had not met says, "You must be Steve." I was like, huh? They responded, "Light-skinned, pretty boy," is how the manager described me. In the same conversation, I found out no one else had ever been invited for a get-to-know-you lunch, and I was out. Got what was supposed to be a prestigious political internship that came with a security clearance and everything. Found out at orientation that the part-time internship was really 40 to 60 hours unpaid, and that no intern had gone on to work with the organization and weren't really given a leg up for other federal posts. We were supposed to facilitate meetings with heads of state, coordinate conferences, and assist the actual employees with composing published research papers for which we would not be credited. They were definitely drinking their own Kool-Aid, so I bounced right on out of there. I was hired to be a waitress, which has a lower hourly wage due to tips. The entire shift they had me wash dishes in the sink, but paid me waitress wages. A few months later, the restaurant was investigated for another of fraudulent activities. I interviewed for a professional marketing assistant and got the job straight away. I was under the impression that I would be an assistant to the man I was interviewed by. When I showed up for my first day, the same waiting room I was in the previous day was full of people. I quickly learned that we were all hired and I would be a door-to-door salesperson selling some pretty useless crap. I spent my entire day inside a Starbucks applying for other jobs and went home, got paid, but never came back. I wasn't the person, but I was training a new guy at a movie theater. A customer asked for extra butter. She was nice and normal. Not a mean or rude customer, the kind I would pay to handle all day long. He puts the popcorn tub down, says, "I'm going to the bathroom," takes off his apron and walks out the front door and never came back. Maybe he crapped his pants and couldn't bear the thought of returning. My brother got fired because he crapped his pants on the third day on the floor and had to go home early. They said they fired him because he wasn't upselling enough at the register. But if you get fired on your second day on register for not trying to get people to sign up for credit cards and the day before you crap your pants, you got fired for crapping your pants. If you make 10,000 shoes, you're a shoemaker. If you fly 10,000 hours, you're a pilot. If you crap one pair of pants, you're the pant crapper. How have you observed or used body language to your own advantage? The most amazing occurrence of body language I've witnessed was a friend back in high school that could control our group of friends. Whenever we were standing in a circle and he wanted to speak, he would simply take a step or two towards the middle. This would cause everyone to quiet down, effectively giving him room to speak uninterrupted. We didn't catch on for a while, but the way he was able to perform it so subtly was amazing. I believe this has to do with personal space and how we instinctively react to an incoming presence. Similar simple ways to control a group. If you're eating dinner and everyone is done and just chatting, simply stand up. People usually follow suit almost unconsciously. Alternately, if you're a group or milling around but should be heading somewhere, just start walking. Generally, everyone will follow. Sometimes I have to tag a friend or two to start walking with me if part of the group is not paying attention, but once you get 3 or 4, the rest tend to follow. Anyone not following due to being engrossed in conversation will soon go, "Wait, where did everyone else go?" and chase after you. I do this a lot at crowded sci-fi and gaming conventions when my group needs to be at a panel or meet up. Next up, we have a rather long story about an individual who seems to have mastered this particular subject matter and used it fully to his own advantage. I once sat next to a guy in my college class that was unreal with things like this. For instance, once before class, while we were waiting outside the room for the professor to arrive, he saw a pretty girl coming down the hall. Immediately, he goes, "I'm going to go talk to her," but doesn't move. I'd always known the guy was suave beyond my years, so I'm really curious as to what his icebreaker is going to be and waiting to see this in action. Being a bit unsure of myself in my early college years, this was like Houdini personally giving me a behind-the-scenes look at a magic trick. The girl was very pretty but had sort of a sour look on her face. In my head, I'm like, no pickup line in the world is cracking this iceberg. Then I watched the true master in action. My first mistake was ever assuming he needed an icebreaker in the first place. He didn't simply start a conversation by saying something, or anything. He used his body posture to make her start the conversation with him. As nonchalantly as you could get, he pulls out his cell phone and pretends to look down at it. When she's about 3 feet away from us while still glancing down, he takes a half step in her direction, in her path. In one smooth motion, he looks up, fakes a reaction of, "Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention," as he takes a half step back to make room for her and leans back against the wall. Her, apparently totally sold on his genuine surprised look and repositioning to make room for her. "Oh, thank you." Him, "Hey, no worries. Traffic these days." "Huh. Yeah, is that Professor X's cost accounting class?" Yeah, how did you know that? Are you an accounting major?" "Yeah, I'm in IA2 right now." How majors refer to intermediate accounting too, meaning she was about 1 semester behind us in the course cycle. Well, you'll do fine if you can handle IA too. It's more difficult than cost accounting is. The trick is to... Oh, really? And the conversational small banter continues. He also told me later he already knew she was an accounting major by recognizing the book she was carrying when he first glanced up from his phone. Don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to in the first conversation, but people like to think they're being informative. This guy was full of these little insights, and how good he was on this bordered on socially manipulative. So yeah, body language is unbelievably powerful for how subtle it is. To answer some of the inquiries I'm getting about this story, I would say he was average looking on the whole, but he certainly knew how to carry himself, and he did dress nice as well. Sitting next to him can also confirm his cologne was on point. So I don't think he had any unnaturally good looks, but good posture, good dress, and a general clean, hygienic appearance will help maximize anybody's potential. And of course, he had that unmistakable aura of natural confidence. You could tell him his car just blew up, and the first thing he'd do was lean to the girl next to him and go, "Hey, I need to go car shopping. Want to come with me?" No, he wasn't even close to being creepy. That's what was so unreal about it. For the first few weeks, that was my thought as well. Nobody's this good without being a serious creep. Or, he does this just to bang chicks. Once again, my mistake. It was never about doing the deed with women. In fact, he never made any kind of comment like that whatsoever. No innuendos, no, "Bro, this chick is so hot." Nothing. He genuinely wanted to meet and get to know this girl to see if they had any chemistry. That simple. And no, he wasn't really a pickup artist. No, he didn't have any hack to the system. There was no good lines. The guy wasn't trying to teach me anything. Although he ended up teaching me quite a bit. This guy just was. I don't think he could teach it even if he really wanted to. What I learned was merely through observation. The beauty of it was how subtle it was, and I wonder if he even knew all of it consciously, or if it was just ingrained subconsciously. For example, when she first said, "Oh, thank you," we were both leaning against the hall wall and she was passing in front of us. Simple enough. By the time the conversation progressed, we were in more of a triangle-type shape, more inclusive, but I never even saw the fricker move. Don't recall anything of us shifting positions whatsoever, but there we were. And only after going over it in my head 1,000 times did I even recognize that it happened, let alone know how it might have made her feel more welcomed. So subtle. But there in the moment, I find it hard to believe that it was part of a calculated endeavor on his part. And I know it wasn't on mine. Like I said, he just was. If I learned one thing from this guy, it would be this. There's a saying in the running world that if you want to be fast, don't try and run fast, try and run easy. And then, when you can run easy, try and run light on your feet. Don't worry, if you can run easy and light on your feet, you will be fast. Same concept applies. If you want to be good at meeting women, don't try and be good at meeting women, put some effort into yourself. Dress well, shower, exercise, these things matter. Learn to get to know all kinds of people of both genders because you want to get to know them. And do it till it's easy for you. Don't worry, if you can put some effort into yourself and getting to know people is easy, you will meet women. And there we have it, folks, the man who just apparently lives and breathes this stuff. I'm still not entirely sure he was all that, and maybe the writer of the story is just a little bit infatuated with him themselves, but there we go. To me, the absolutely most important thing I've learned about body language is that it had to be taken into context. What else they're doing, what they're talking about, who they're talking to, where they are, etc. When starting to observe, it's easy to take one gesture or posture or expression and go, "Hey, look, crossed arms. That equals defensiveness." Or whatever, but that's only one part of an equation. If body language is an actual language, then crossed arms is just one word. You can't figure out what someone is saying by just looking at one word. You've got to look at the whole sentence. I often catch myself mirroring the actions of people I'm interested in, so I guess that's something. Agreed, it's a circular paradox. I can never work out if I'm mirroring them or they're mirroring me. Either way, it definitely indicates interest. During a job interview, sit in the same posture as your interviewer is sitting in. It gives the impression that you're feeling the same way that they are. "I don't think you're right for this job." "My thoughts exactly, sir." Both get up and leave. In a quiet room full of people, for example, a classroom, scream as loud as you can in your mind. Anyone that winces is a mind reader. You should watch out for them. "Wow, I'm surprised I'd come this far in the thread to get to the important stuff. I just did it, and someone wouldn't stop staring at me for 5 minutes. Confirmed." Not exactly body language in the traditional sense, but I've sold 6 or 7 houses in my time, and I've always known which viewer would put on an offer by the fact that they 1. Used the bathroom, and 2. Altered something. It's held true every time. I stage my houses very carefully, and I know when anything has been moved, or used, or changed, and would tell my husband to expect a call from the agent that evening. My guess is that the folks are subconsciously taking possession or marking territory. Ah yes, christening the toilet is vital when moving into a new home. Failing that, peeing your initials into the master bedroom carpet is an acceptable substitute. When it comes to non-verbal communication, you don't just like for one particular behavior, you're looking for clusters, and even then, nothing is ever 100% true. Also, you have to take into consideration different cultures have different mores. What's considered acceptable in one culture might not be in another. In a group conversation, people will tend to look at the person they're most comfortable with the most. Self-touching is often a sign a person is nervous or anxious. Lip-biting is often a sign of arousal. Pupil dilation is a sign that a person is excited, and possibly on substances. I think the changes in body language are more significant than anything else. For example, and I've had this pointed out to me, I normally stand with a pretty straight posture, ex-figure skater here. But when I start talking to someone else I think is cute, I quite obviously arch my back and shift my weight entirely onto one hip. This might be a normal posture for someone else, but the shift is what makes it significant. In conclusion, don't trust static body posture. Someone could have just been chilling like that. Watch how their body position changes when you approach. That's possibly a valid hypothesis. I think I definitely shift and shuffle a bit more when I'm anxious or uncomfortable about something or someone, so maybe this post author knows what they're talking about. Speaking from someone who used to be in car sales, some guys look for the wiggle during test drives. That's shifting in the seat while driving to get more comfortable. Probably something to do with taking mental ownership of the vehicle. Hands in pockets or arms crossed equals defensive. Needs more rapport building before pitching. Some people are so intimidated about walking into a dealership that they prefer to walk the lot after business hours at night. That's fine too. We had a computer programmer so overly stimulated that we recognized that and organized a quiet room for him to sit down and discuss his options. He bought the car and thanked us. Some things like handshakes are culturally specific. I always greeted someone with a firm handshake and look in the eye. Clients from India generally give limp shakes because that's more usual if they shake at all. Chinese and Japanese prefer no bodily contact in business. A quick bow or nod usually suffices. For farmers, whoever speaks first loses. There was a guy who regularly came in to look around and all these sales guys tried to pitch him. He eventually brought from the one guy who kept his mouth shut and ignored him. Not sure how that works. Always know who the boss is. Do not assume it's the man or the woman based on who's talking the most, based on hetero norms. Both parties need to be engaged. Very low chance of a deal without the spouse, regardless of what someone says about being able to make a decision. Work and loss prevention. This one, among many, many others, is almost always true. When a person has made the decision to shoplift and is about to conceal, they look like they're peeing in the pool. Every time. LP is all about body language. Or they're like me and they're paranoid that they changed their mind about that thing they were going to buy and put it back, but then picked it up again and now everyone thinks I'm shoplifting, but I swear I'm not. And no, I do not need assistance and I'm a normal average customer, just going about my casual business in your fine establishment. I don't want to go to prison. I won't make it in prison. Shaking someone's hand can make you memorable. This is just something I've observed, so I'm not passing it off as a general truth. When I meet someone new in a casual setting, a friend of a friend, someone's co-worker, someone's family member, etc., a person who acknowledges your existence and makes their way over to shake your hand will have an immediate impact on me over someone who just smiles and nods or waves or whatever. I feel more comfortable with someone who makes the initiative to shake your hand for whatever the reasons may be. I'm much more likely to approach someone whose hand I've shaken to learn more about them at some point in the night. This very much goes in the business world as well. I know it's common knowledge to shake someone's hand when you meet them first time in a business setting, but if someone approaches you to shake your hand while they're leaving, they are far more memorable in my mind. It gives me a sense of belonging, knowing that someone thought about me in particular before leaving a place or setting and had to make their way over to let me know they're leaving. This also works with customer-client relationships. If a customer shakes my hand after a transaction is completed, I'll remember them and may give them some sort of incentives or discounts next time I see them. Americans love a firm handshake, but the same custom is not necessarily true in other countries. It can also be a male thing, with some men using a crushing handshake and holding it for a long time, making it a move of dominance. Lyndon Johnson used to hold the handshake and then grab the lapel of the other man's suit with his other hand, and then stand very close until he got the answer he wanted. Pediatrician here. Girls as young as 9 to 12 will start twirling or playing with their hair if they are attracted to someone. It's pretty adorable to see it develop. This doesn't have to be a romantic attraction, you weirdos. It can happen when they see someone doing something impressive, talking to someone important, etc. This behavior continues but can take on many different patterns, like pushing their hair forward. Some guys take this as a sign that the girl is covering up, but it's probably closer to, "Hey, look at my pretty hair." Take a look at the audience during The Voice or whatever country has got talent, etc. Look at the audience when a slightly cute boy sings decent or better. It's hilarious to watch. It's like a collective sploosh among the girls ranging from 12 to 32. Well, now I can't unread this ever, and now if I ever watch a show with a studio audience, the people I'm watching with are going to wonder why I burst out laughing when a good-looking man walks on stage and there is a camera shot to the audience. When one person grooms another during social interaction, "Oh, you've got some lint on your shoulder, let me just..." She or he is being subconsciously affectionate to that other person and welcoming him or her into the pack. I mean family. Like monkeys picking each other's nits. I had a teacher that was a former cop. He pointed out that a person in a normal state of mind will swing their arms slightly while they move or walk. Angry people have a tendency to hold their arms at their sides and not move them. Always true? Maybe not. Often true? Sure. The same basic rule applies here, and also implies that you're trying to hide something. If your hands sit unmoving in your pocket, you're most likely angry but attempting to keep this hidden. Brooding, if you will. If they're swinging around in there, you're in a normal state of mind or attempting to hide the fact that you're publicly pleasuring yourself. But what if you just want to put your hands in there because you don't like flailing them around? Clearly, any attempt at comfort and ease is a sign of being angry. There's too many absolutes in this thread. I had purposely unbuttoned and tucked the flaps of my 2 breast pockets into the pockets before going out a few weeks back because I wanted to try the look. Anyway, while talking to a female friend, she reached over and fixed them. I thought it was rather endearing. I often fixed my boyfriend's sleeves when we were first going out. I still do, but I did it back then too, and I kept apologizing, just like, "Sorry, that was bugging me. It was all flipped up." And finally, after a handful of months, he said, "No, he really likes it when I do that." I never understood why, but I guess it's probably for this reason. It's a welcoming feeling, I guess, someone fixing you up to make sure you look nice. People who mimic your body language don't want to displease you. That's as close to universally true as these things go. You cross your arms, they cross their arms, that sort of thing. Nervous people often lick their lips and swallow. Liars often do too, as well as touch their mouth, but it can be delayed after the lie when they feel like they've got away with it. Like if you respond with, "Oh, that makes sense," that's when they lick their lips. People falsely accused of lying generally have a stronger reaction than those caught in the lie. One-on-one, that sometimes comes out as the honest person confronts you face-on, while the liar turns a little away. It's more about the line of their hips and shoulders, not so much where they point their nose. I once read that if someone is accused of something they didn't do, they'll be more likely to use contractions in their speech. Something to do with being so comfortable with their own innocence that they speak informally. "I didn't twist her arm." Truth. "I did not twist her arm." Lie. Maybe bunk, but when applied to my children, I find it's fairly accurate. "I did not have relations with that woman." If you're in a situation where you have to pretend to be surprised, keep your eyebrows raised for more than a second. That's a telltale sign. Genuinely surprised people will keep their face in that state for more than 1 second. I'm pretty sure you just made 10,000 people raise their eyebrows and pretend to be shocked at something, only to find that they looked ridiculous. I discovered this one on my own, although I probably wasn't the first. This works for girls and guys. When someone suddenly sees someone they find attractive, the first thing they usually do is fix their hair. They usually can't stop themselves, it's an instinctive thing, like, "Oh, someone's hot, gotta look fly." So the next time you're walking about and someone fixes their hair right when they see you, they're attracted to you. Can confirm. I always do this when looking at the mirror. Wandering eyes in a shop. Not the determined kind, the thinking kind. They're looking for presents. This observation has become so spot on that I ask our customers, "So, who are you getting a gift for?" And that always surprises them and breaks the ice.
People looking to steal something have their eyes everywhere else besides what they're taking. Watching their body versus their eyes is a pretty good sign to customer service them into leaving. I remember saying to some kid that just pocketed some rare earth magnets at my store, "Hey man, those magnets are pretty cool, huh?" He then rounded the corner and stuck them into a metal pole and walked out. I felt more proud of myself for stopping the theft more than the $2 it saved the store. Working in a bookshop, this was usually so obvious you could laugh. You'd get guys walk in, open a random fiction novel in the middle of the book, and start skimming through it like a magazine. But their eyes were never on the pages, they'd never even look at what they were reading. This is a cool switch. According to AmITheA, changing your posture can change your mindset, and your mindset can change your behavior. So, say, sit in a submissive way for just a couple of minutes, and inexplicably, you're not as likely to make assertive positions. Now, changing to a powerful stance, and a couple of minutes later with no prompting, you feel like you're in charge. Assertive and comfortable with making high-power decisions, even when they're a gamble. Glance at their feet. If they're pointed towards you, they're engaged in your conversation. If they're pointed away, often toward an exit, they'd like to end the conversation. I use this at work all the time, and I notice myself doing it. If the person isn't breathing, you should run away because you've killed them in your fit of rage. Works every time. If you see a guy walking down the street and he awkwardly lifts one leg up higher than the other repeatedly, he's trying to peel his sack off his inner thigh without alerting whomever he is with. We mostly do this when we're with women or family. If we're around other guys, no fricks given. I wish my roommate would learn that me walking away from him into my room means it's the end of the gosh darn conversation. Stop bringing new crap up or starting a new story. Mother fricker will keep telling me new crap despite me having disappeared into my room. I don't even act interested. The dude just can't not talk. Someone mentioned body language clues being generally true but not universal. I suffer fairly bad anxiety in public spaces. I've been told by my friends that I look angry as I walk down the street. I've received looks from security staff in shops, maybe in my head because of the anxiety, etc., as I walk around the store looking shifty and darting my eyes everywhere until I settle down. I think I look everything but nervous. I'm sure most people have a more general character, and you can assume body language for them, but a good 10% must have less typical personality traits that affect their body language. If someone hugs you and then pats you on the back simultaneously, they're uncomfortable with hugging you. If you're having a conversation with a girl and some guy just comes in and interrupts the conversation, don't stay. In fact, walk away. If the girl doesn't like that guy, she'll automatically come looking for you. People will always revert back to someone they trust or are interested in.
Bug exterminators of Reddit. What was your "we're gonna need a bigger boat" moment? Spent the summer between high school and college working for a local, family-run exterminating company. Nice gig. Residential treatments during the day, mosquito fogging at night, and the occasional dairy farm treated for flies and rats. One day, I'm at one of these dairy farms and enter the milking parlor to spray and set up traps. See a rather large cat across the parlor from the front door. Good for him, I think, growing fat, eating rodents and whatever else he's caught over the years. I enter the parlor and the cat moves, and I realize the cat is not a cat, but a rat. Easily the size of a 12 to 15 pound feline and running down a drainage pipe. Decided that I did not want to be a sacrifice to the Rat King that day and noped out of there fast. Rats, rats, where the rats? I'm not an exterminator, but that didn't stop my aunt from asking me and my brother from taking care of a hornet's nest. I figured that I could handle it. Heard somewhere that WD-40 supposedly kills hornets, so one night we go over with a can of spray foam and a half-dozen cans of WD-40. It was quiet, so I quickly spray the entrance shut with the foam and we go to town on it with the WD. That's when we heard an unholy and frankly terrifying sound come from the nest. We should have ran, but we kept spraying. However, the hornets were not going without a fight. They somehow tore open another entrance and poured out. That's when we started running. Luckily, I parked my car close by and had the doors open, but I had a couple dozen stings, as did my brother. 2 out of 10 would not try it again. That said, the hornets did abandon the nest, and a couple of days later when the swelling went down, we went back, cut the branch down, and lit the nest on fire. It went up in a puff of flame and smoke, so that was fun. But never again am I going up against hornets without calling an exterminator first. I developed a phobia of wasps in the last couple of weeks. I deal with industrial batteries for forklifts, order pickers, stuff like that. We had a 3-day job down in Eugene where we basically had to just pressure wash a crapload of batteries. The customer had to set up outside underneath this metal overhang, during the hottest week in Oregon history, mind you, so that sucked as well. There were nests all along the underside of the overhang, and their occupants were less than thrilled with our presence there. On the 3rd day, we were finally wrapping up, and there were a few older batteries that we needed to prep for shipping because the customer was getting rid of them. One of them was on a busted pallet, so we needed to move it to another one. To do this, you take a strap with 2 hooks on it and hook it to either side of the battery. Well, I go to hook it up, and when I put the hook into the lifting eye of the battery, a crapload of wasps flew out of it and attacked me. I say this with no pride whatsoever. There is no manly way to run away from a swarm of angry wasps. I frolicked out of there as fast as my butt could frolic. Then, I grabbed a broom and used it to open up the lid of this battery, at which point I find the wasps have built a gigantic nest inside the battery. The lid is maybe 3 feet long, probably 10 inches across. These suckers built up all along the bottom of it. They were hanging out inside the battery cells where all the acid and lead and fun stuff is. So yeah, we didn't ship that one. Not dealing with mutant acid-soaked wasps. Pulled back insulation in a crawl space to track termite damage. About 100 plus baby/juvenile cottonmouths came out from where the dryer vent wasn't hooked up properly, keeping them nice and warm and moist in the insulation as fall approached. I'm only a termite exterminator. Got out that crawl space quicker than lightning. To this day, I'm sure the termites and snakes are living under there happily ever after. Got called out to a house that had a roach problem. So, I walk in the house, and I crap you not, you could barely see the color of the walls and ceiling for all the roaches. It was literally raining roaches from the ceiling. The people inside just sitting around, like it's a normal Monday, and laughing about catching roaches falling from the ceiling. Without a doubt, the most disgusting thing I've encountered. Edit. Forgot to mention, I opened the cabinets and I'll never forget seeing the hundreds of thousands going across their pots and pans.
It's raining roach! Hallelujah! It's raining roaches!
I worked at a gas station on overnights and asked my manager to do something about the spider infestation. I hate spiders, and it was so bad customers started going to other places because these big spiders would build webs over the door in the span of 40 minutes between customers, plus the entire awning and overhang was just a mess of webs and hanging spider nests. So she goes out and buys some spray, and it barely does anything. So she goes and buys a bunch of spray and is standing outside one day just spraying the awnings and overhang, the doors, air pump, etc. Anyways, there was this large crack in the siding, so she stuck the spray nozzle inside and started spraying. I'd have died. What followed was so bad, I probably would have died from terror. The way she described it, after the screaming stopped and the color came back, was as if someone turned a great big faucet on. Hundreds of spiders just came pouring out like water. Must have been a ton of nests inside there. Not an exterminator. Get used to hearing that, by the way. Screw it, since we're all just sharing our worst anyway. My apartment's got an indoor trash chute under the kitchen sink. It has a habit of falling open by itself, and pests crawl up and into our house from it. Roaches, the works. We've been fighting them for weeks. Eventually, 17-year-old me comes up with the brilliant plan of doing a seal. I use trash bags and some strong tape to make an airtight seal around the offending chute. I do 3 layers of magic. The barrier works. The roaches couldn't cross into our realm from theirs. 3 years later, we start finding small dead roaches in the kitchen, maybe one in the toilet. I've forgotten all about the dark forces I banished years ago, and I'm mystified. The bodies start getting bigger as the weeks pass. Eventually, we start finding live specimens, and they're pretty large. I finally twig that perhaps the ancient seal has been breached. I get on down to the compartment under the sink and open it up. Horror. The roaches had slowly bitten through the seals and ended up breeding within the layers of the seal. Eventually, they got through the final seal, and as the breach grew wider, larger and more vicious bugs got through. I could see them roiling and seething in a bunch within the plastic. I realized what a huge mistake I made all those years ago, and now the evil was back for me. I ended up bringing in some industrial-strength pesticide and fighting through the outer guard to get to the breach. I couldn't let any survivors past me or would get into the house. I pushed the tube into the breach and made a temporary seal around it with more tape and let loose with the pesticide. I could hear the roaches scrambling in the plastic, getting more hectic as they started to die. Fighting continued as I was still rounding up survivors who escaped and putting them down while the pesticide did its work. Once I heard nothing from the seal, I tore it down. It was carnage, beyond disgusting. That motivated us to tear that crap out and get a new roach-proof chute installed. And I got an idea for a fantasy setting for my creative work. We have a problem with Japanese beetles. Like, a big one. I bought a trap after seeing 10 or 20 hanging out on my roses. But then, the trap was completely full within an hour. We're talking thousands of beetles caught in just an hour. So I go to investigate. Surely they didn't all come from my roses, right? So I start checking my trees, a few here and there until I get to this crepe myrtle at the very edge of the yard. It was literally covered in beetles, as in the beetles were screwing. Hundreds of thousands of beetles. My dad decided the best thing to do was to shake the tree and scare them off. That was the worst idea. Beetles rained from the heavens. The sky was dark and swirling with beetles. They covered me, even though I had retreated to a safe distance, sticking in my hair, crawling in my clothes. Dad stopped, dropped, and rolled. As these beetles were stirred into action, so were all of the beetles from all of the trees beyond. It was Armageddon. I was not convinced I would survive this. A few days later, Dad, dressed in a makeshift hazmat suit, went out and doused every tree with the most toxic bug killer he could find. Even now, weeks later, we have to pick the stiff corpses of beetles out of our dog's fur whenever he comes inside. I still have nightmares. Screw Japanese beetles. I'm not an exterminator, but I do bee removals for a living. The most honey I pulled out of a house was about 250 pounds. That's about 21 gallons of honey. I had to leave halfway through to go to Home Depot because I only had 3 to 5 gallon buckets with me. People sometimes try and kill hives with Raid. While it may be effective in some cases, no one is going to call me when it works. In other cases, it backfires spectacularly. For most of her life, the queen is fat to lay eggs. She can fly, but only short distances. So sometimes, when you spray a hive, you'll annoy the bees enough for them to abandon the hive and try to start a new one, but the queen is too fat, so they'll only move to another spot in the same house. The workers at the old hive will raise a new queen, and now you have 2 hives. I removed 7 different hives at the same house because the guy never caught on to what he was doing and kept spraying the bees. Not an exterminator, but this happened to a friend of mine in college. He was in a frat and actually lived in the frat house. During one of the parties they threw, a water pipe was broken. They didn't stop the party or really even act like it happened, so there was just water all over the place. Eventually, they just shut off the water, but didn't call any kind of plumber/cleaner for the water that was probably an inch deep on the floor. Instead, they set up little stepping stones to make it out of the front door without getting in water. However, because there was so much stagnant water just sitting around, mosquitoes were breeding like crazy. I crap you not, you couldn't be in the house for more than 5 minutes without getting 50 mosquito bites. The worst place I've ever been. They were eventually kicked out of the house when the frat advisor saw what happened, called the landlord, and the landlord had seen what happened. My husband and his first wife had a spider infestation in their backyard one summer. It started with spiders in their cedar hedges, a few. They knew they were in trouble when the entire hedge turned white from the webs. My husband goes to the hardware store and gets some maliciouscompliance, dons a hazmat suit, and goes outside to start spraying. As he sprays, the cedars start to shake, the entire 6-foot-high hedge is shaking, spiders start dropping on him, and he drops the malicioccompliance and runs. A week later, all the grass is now white too. He calls 2 different exterminators who say F this, but also tell him to call the Ministry of Natural Resources. Resource officer comes out, looks, explains what the spiders are. I don't recall the species, but they were big. And apparently, the eggs can lay in gestation for decades, waiting for exactly the right environment. Apparently, they like to lay nests in wood. Being the Ministry of Natural Resources, they don't offer to kill the spiders, naturally. He is out of options and has to wait until the frost kills all of these suckers. In Canada, frost comes usually October-ish, so frost comes, never has he been so thrilled to greet a Canadian winter. Next spring, he calls his buddy, kind of a roughneck, to help him dismantle the wood shed in the back of the yard, which is assumed to be the nesting grounds. As my husband and his then-wife cower inside, they watch out the kitchen door as Buddy tears down to the shed to burn at his farm. The shed's rafters are covered in what looks like pillows, clouds, foam. All the rafters are positively bathed in spider eggs. Buddy dismantles the shed, puts it in his trailer, and takes all of the wood and the nest to the farm for cremation. Buddy also has a terrific time going up to the window and taunting them with the rafters. As an epilogue, just when they think this nightmare is over, one spring day they have a nice bath, and as they get out of the tub, there is a large spider, the same species, on the outside of the tub. He crushes it with a CD case. It's so large, it made a crunch. That must have been the last one, as they never returned. Freaking horror show. TLDR, entire backyard is bathed in spiders, no help available, have to wait for winter to kill them off. Turns out the old wooden shed was the breeding ground. Beekeeper, but most of us are somehow in the wasp removal business too. Mentor thought he saw a small hornet's nest and took about the precautions of making a dainty wasp trap out of vinegar in an old Sprite bottle. Upon realizing the hellacious magnitude of these little suckers, he filled an outdoor vac with dishwater, set the hose under his gutter, and set the thing to suck. He's already emptied out 3 gallons of hornets. Bye, buttholes. Not a bug exterminator, but the first apartment I ever got after college I now refer to as Crap Hole. There were lots of off things about Crap Hole, like how people like to break my apartment's windows, or how, upon move-in, the dishwasher turned out to be just for show and inoperable. Crap Hole was street level. The basement level, which I discovered via a crawlspace door hanging open into the alleyway that led to the washer/dryer area, was filled with abandoned construction supplies, to the brim. As in, old paint and wood and screws toppling out of the crawlspace. I knew it was a cesspool, I knew pests probably lived there, I figured raccoons, and decided to get on the lookout for a new apartment. The day of move-out, the day I need to pack all my stuff, I'm showering in the 2x2-foot shower stall, and something touches my feet. It's red, with long crooked antenna, but it's small. Just as I kick it off, 3 more appear. Baby German cockroaches have hatched in the drain of my shower stall. They're crawling up through the drain and onto my feet, up my legs, up the walls. Within seconds, they're everywhere. I ran out of the bathroom, still wet and soapy, and slammed the door. Nope, this is Crap Hole, and no door fits its frame. The cockroaches come bursting out through the crack underneath it. I rush to the bedroom, shampoo in my hair, my body wetting the whole floor behind me, and shake my boyfriend awake. Before I can even tell him what's happening, there's a meow, meow down the hall. My cat had been in the bathroom while I showered. Crap. I run back, will myself to open the bathroom door, where roaches are still scampering under the cracks and desperate mew mew sounds are emanating. I open it. The roaches are climbing the mirror, they're in the shower curtain. I find my cat, a baby roach on his side, one in his whiskers, and flick them off, grabbing him and carrying him outside. So there we sat. Outside our apartment, the 3 of us trying to figure out what to do at this point. All we want is to get out of Crap Hole, and now every item we own is infested. Now, no matter what we do, Crap Hole will follow us, and it'll screw not just us, but our new neighbors, our new neighborhood too. We Googled it. We put everything we owned in an XXL black double-thick garbage bag meant for yard work from Home Depot. We filled each bag with pesticide. We moved the bags to our new apartment and let them sit out on the patio for 2 days. We slept on wood floors. We bought all new groceries. We bought 2 new towels. 2 days pass. We open the bags and nothing moves. We wash all the clothes/linens. I haven't seen a cockroach since. But F that apartment. F you, Crap Hole. May you burn to the ground. Obligatory, I'm not an exterminator, but my dad and stepmom held their wedding at our house. They wanted something small, close family and close friends only. Basically, like an average get-together with cake and a ceremony. They got Italian food catered, and it was overall an amazing time. Fast forward to maybe 2 or 3 days after, I was cleaning up the last of the mess from the party, and I go to take the garbage out. There are a handful of flies around the garbage, but I think nothing of it because, well, it is trash after all. I had 2 bags of garbage in my hands, so I kinda have to kick the garbage can open. I kick it open, it flings open, and there is a sea of maggots. We're talking in the tens of thousands at the very least, maybe hundreds. I couldn't see any garbage beneath them. I had kicked it open with such force that many of them had flung out and onto me. I was wearing Old Navy flip-flops and oversized basketball shorts. Some actually flew up the leg of my pants from the kick and onto my bare feet. I dropped everything and screamed as loud as I've ever screamed before. I went into the driveway to dry heave, shake out my shorts, and I even started crying a bit. I have an incredible fear of maggots, and this experience had made it 10 times as horrible to me. My dad and stepmom got home from a movie as I was having my little meltdown in the driveway. He asked what was wrong, and I told him. He went to go see for himself. I heard a scream, and he ran back to the garage. I went inside to cool down a bit. He came back in 15 minutes visibly shaken. I asked him what he ended up doing, and he said, "I just went to the garbage, got all the wasp, ant, spider, and snake-killing chemicals as I could, opened up the garbage with my eyes closed, and unloaded every single can." What had happened was that we had so much meat left over from the catering order, chicken parmesan, Italian sausage, etc., that we had to throw it all away, in the garbage. This was during July in Texas, so the meat had been rotting in the dry 103-degree heat for an entire day or two. Hey, just so people are aware, if you ever end up with that much food left over, call up your nearest shelter of any kind and ask them if you can donate it. No wasted food, no maggots. Finally, an exterminator story. Walked into a house for a roach startup. The walls moved. They were in the dressers, beds, closets, furniture, not to mention common areas like the kitchen and baths. Heck, they were in the walls. The place was an old, run-down, 5,000-plus square feet nightmare that I had to clear out single-handedly. 3 months of weekly 2-hour services, and I got things under control. Then the rat problem started. I wasn't too heartbroken when the service was canceled for non-payment. Went to an old woman's trailer for a routine pest control job. Spray the outside, put some granular down, simple stuff. Then she comes out of the house and exclaims she has roaches. Never been to the house before, was just covering for a coworker. So I go in and immediately I smell German roach infestation. So I look around and see all of these glue boards with 50 to 100 roaches on them. Pull out the fridge, and there has to be at least 300 on the walls. I turn and look at this old lady and say, "Ma'am, how long have you had these?" She told me she has had them for 3 years, so I go around looking for the rest of the house, and I'll list a few things I found. A back porch filled with cat food and cat poop. Very heavy termite damage in her roof. I ask her how long she's had the termites, and she responds, "Since I moved in." And I ask her, "How long ago did you move in?" She replies, 22 years ago. The house is a death trap. And a family of possums living in the corner of the house. I told her we need to fumigate the house. It will kill the roaches and termites in one go, and she told me she is treating the termites herself with some crap she bought at Walmart. I told her I will come back to treat the house with my manager. Flash forward a week, and me and my manager spent 2 hours at the place, spraying and getting every crack and crevice we can. I'm still treating that house, and it's been 5 months. On a side note, the old lady obviously had dementia. She would go, "Oh," whenever I would tell her about basic hygienic living. I'm going back again next week, and if she hasn't changed, I'm ending her service with us, and she can live in that house and rot. Edit, I'll make an anonymous tip for the lady.
What is a time your pet has genuinely surprised you? My cat once pounced on a poisonous snake that was moving towards my son. He pinned it down until one of us got to him and then let the snake go. Kitty got some extra nice tuna fish that night. As some people have commented, snakes are venomous, not poisonous. Whatever. Gary doesn't care, he just saw something he could pounce on. I was doing some electrical work in an empty 2-story industrial building. I brought my dog along because she likes running around, exploring, and chasing mice. Every so often she'd take a break and come visit me working. I only had one electrical part left, a nut-like wire tensioner, and I showed it to my dog randomly and said, "Go get it." The pile of these parts was downstairs in a 20 to 30 room building on a pile of gear. My dog, who is crappy at even playing fetch, shows up 5 minutes later having identified the part I asked her for and bought me a new one. Now, at dinner parties, I always try to find 2 of the same objects and hide them somewhere in the house, and she always amazes guests by showing up with what I asked her. I've hired people who I send for a wrench and 2 hours later they return with pliers. Does your dog have a criminal record? And if not, does he have an updated resume? My favorite cat, now passed, had many strange habits. He played with water in the sink, jumped in the shower when you were taking too long, jumped and left paw prints on the top of our walls, etc. But the one time he truly surprised me was nearly 16 years ago. I walked into my bedroom and found my wife crying and holding the cat. I asked her what was wrong and she started to explain. I was tired and decided to take a nap. Butterscotch jumped up, curled up with me, and then started kneading my stomach. I didn't understand what she was getting at and told her so. She said that the last time he did that was when she was pregnant with our first daughter 5 years earlier, and he never did it since. She was convinced that he was trying to tell her that she was pregnant again, and she was crying because she was so happy. She had even made an appointment to get a pregnancy check. Turns out, 4 weeks pregnant. I missed that cat. He made it to over 20 years. Cats, man. They can be really nasty little mean buttholes, but there are several in this collection of stories that exemplify what the best of them can be like. Related, the whole recording session is making me want to go and buy a whole bunch of pets. I posted this story a few months ago, but it's pretty typical of the interactions between my dog, a Corgi Sheltie mix, and me. After 8 years of things like this, there's very little that surprises me with him. A while back, I was playing fetch with him out at the lake. He was starting to get bored, so after getting the ball one time, he carried it with him behind a tree, dropped it, and then trotted back to me as if there had been no ball in the first place. I wanted to see what he'd do next, so I got the ball and threw it again. This time, he ran and got it, then proceeded to jump in the lake, swim out 20 to 30 feet, drop the ball in the water, and swim back. Needless to say, this ended our game of fetch. We had a Jack Russell who would just play reverse fetch. My daughter had really proudly just taught him to fetch when he took the ball, trotted over to the patio railing, we live on the 3rd floor apartment, and dropped it over the side. I went down to go get it, gave it back to him, and he went right back out and dropped it over the edge again. I live next to a mental health facility. I never really bought the idea that dogs could sense things in people, but when I got my Weimaraner and took him for walks around the hospital grounds, he would act completely different when someone with a mental illness approached us versus a staff member. Even if they were 100 feet away, he would stop playing and stand by my side if they were a patient. Weird. I had severe depression problems as a teen, and some days I wouldn't get out of bed. My lab at the time would come up, stick his nose under my arm, flip it up so it lands on him, or would bring his toy and drop it into my lap. The dog knew when I wasn't doing well, and did everything he could to make me active. We used to have a kitty that would go to work with my dad. He worked in a grain terminal where farmers would bring in their grain and they would put it onto train cars and send it out to wherever, mills, etc. While Dad was working, the kitty would be running around the place chasing mice or playing with the farmers when they came in. The phone rang off the hook around there. Almost every few minutes the phone would ring and someone would answer it. If the secretary was out, one of the other guys would have to come in and answer it. I was just a young lad back then, but one day the phone was ringing and nobody was coming to answer it. The cat jumps onto the desk, flips the receiver off the base station so it's upside down, speaker and mic facing up, and starts meowing into it. I swear the farmer must have been confused as heck. When I asked my dad about it, he said that the kitty will let it ring 4 times before she hops up and answers it. I was blown away. Was a damn good kitty. I had a male cat named Stinky. In all the time I had him, approximately 5 years, he had never slept in the bed with my wife and me. I go on a business trip once, and the first day I'm gone, my wife is laying in bed reading, and Stinky actually jumps on the bed with her, and this is crucial, in the spot where I usually sleep. My wife is surprised, but keeps on reading. Stinky proceeds to roll onto his back and extend his wiener, making sure that the wife sees it. In conclusion, my cat waited for me to go out into town and try to seduce my wife. I think he owes you a dead bird for that one. Hamsters. Mum had a litter, and after they went from little pinkies to little fuzzies, they would take turns in the wheel, 2 to 3 side by side, getting up speed, while the others would line up outside, and one by one grab onto the rim of the wheel, get lifted up and let go, to get flung to the other side of the cage, then get back in line. They also traded up runners from time to time. Some hamster democratic process. There's an analogy for America somewhere in here. Hamsters are funny little weirdos as is, and the prospect of a flying hamster circus only makes them seem cuter. Bless. We have a cat that never played with toys. She would watch the other cats play, and sometimes try to do it herself, but couldn't wrap her mind around bat the ball and chase it. She was pretty dumb in general. If you put a clear glass on the floor with milk in it, she would swat at the sides while the other cats would reach their paws in the top and get the milk. So I got a laser pointer and was playing with the other cats. After a while, the dumb cat showed up and I thought that maybe she would have fun with the red dot since she didn't understand other toys. I zipped the dot around the floor.
She looked at it, followed it with her eyes, then walked to my feet, reached up and put her paw over the end of the pointer, blocking the laser. I have no idea if she understood or if it was a coincidence, but it really surprised me. You have a cat nerd. Doesn't really get sports or bars, but great with high-energy physics problems. Maybe your cat was just really smart instead of really dumb. Sees ball, doesn't understand why hitting a ball over and over is fun. Sees laser dot, goes to source and stops it. Sees milk glass, tries to spill it over rather than drink it little by little. Mr. Energy Flow might be onto something here. Oh, my cat does the same thing. He'll first put his head in the glass, and if he can't get any water, he'll just knock it over. A glass is his first priority. He will skip his full bowl, walk right by it, to get on the computer desk and drink my near-empty water glass. After the third keyboard got destroyed, I replaced his bowl with a glass. Apparently that's all he wanted. One of my cats kept meowing. I checked her food bowl, water bowl, litter box, and general health, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I gave her plenty of attention and playtime and went back to working on some homework. She continued meowing. Finally, I threw my arms up and to the side in frustration and said, "What do you want?" She looked me dead in the eye, raised her paws in the exact same exasperated way I had my arms raised. She was literally standing upright on two legs, holding out her paws like I had my arms, and made her best attempt to copy my speech by saying, "Meow," before scuttling away. I was speechless and stunned for a good minute and relatively freaked out. I'd never had a cat mimic my behavior before. She's never done it again, despite my attempts to encourage it. My cat Dusty has a small cat door to go outside in the summer. Ducks regularly come into my yard and I feed them bread sometimes. Well, Dusty one night grabs the loaf of bread off the counter, takes it out of the cat door, then hides the bread in the bushes. He takes a piece of bread and puts it in an open area and waits in nearby bushes. He was trying to bait ducks with bread. Frickin' genius cat. I had to leave my dog alone for a couple of hours in the morning and the night before he had eaten something that didn't quite agree with his stomach. When I came back, he didn't greet me like he usually does, so I was suspicious. He couldn't get out of the house to poop, so he had to poop in the middle of the living room. I didn't yell at him, no point now, plus he knew it was wrong and he just couldn't hold it in. He hasn't done this since he was a pup 3 years ago. Well, I go to investigate and see that there's been a disturbance in the bathroom. The rug in front of the toilet was all thrown around and the toilet seat had scratches on it. I think my dog, after the many times he had seen me poop with the door open, decided that he needed to go there but didn't know how to use it, so he scratched the seat while trying and threw the rug around in anger of not being able to do it. Then he pooped on the carpet as a last resort. I had a lovable golden retriever whose name was Duncan. Like many dogs, he had a supreme sense of emotions of my family members, comforting us when we were sad, jumping around with us when we were excited. He really sensed how we felt and adapted to the situation, but lots of dogs do that, so that's not the surprising part. He had a sensitive stomach and often threw up despite our best efforts to feed him carefully and beneficially. My mom never scolded him for throwing up in the house, but he still felt extremely guilty whenever it happened. One day, he slowly came up next to me as I was doing homework. Glancing at him, I saw he had his mouth jammed shut and refused to open it for me. When I got out of my chair, he politely led me to the back door, signaling that he had to go outside. I quickly let him out, and after walking all the way across our deck and down the steps into the grass, he let loose the largest amount of vomit I've ever seen. He spent a solid 30 seconds emptying the contents of his stomach into a neat pile on our yard. Conclusion, after patiently storing vomit in his mouth for at least a full minute, my faithful dog politely led me outside, across our deck and into our yard, where he emptied all of his stomach contents in a neat pile so that my mom wouldn't have to clean up after him. It's been said many times by many people, but we don't deserve doggos. No other animal will put themselves through that amount of discomfort just to make us happy. When I was a kid, I had a cat that was a little odd. One day, my mother caught 2 teenage boys tormenting my cat along an alley that went along outside our house. She thought they were trying to cut the cat's tail off with a craft knife, so ran and kicked one of the boys away. My cat went to run off, but when it saw that the boy with the knife had turned on my mother, it went nuts, launched itself at the boy's face, and tore it to bits in a frenzy. Never heard of cats doing that kind of thing. I got my cat in college. He was very young when I got him, and I was pretty much the only human he interacted with, so he was very attached to me. He loved to snuggle and purr and was never a biter. Anyway, I happened to have an eating disorder at the time, and I would weigh myself several times a day. The weight would not be what I wanted, and I would get upset. After a few weeks of having the cat, I went to go step on the scale. As I tried to step on it, the cat launched himself across the bed, tackled my calf, and bit down very hard.
He never did things like that. After that episode, he proceeded to bite and scratch me whenever I went for the scale. Apparently, his cat logic was, human girl steps on box, gets sad, and cries. I must make sure she never steps on the box. Funny thing is, this actually helped me get treatment for the problem. I was like, crap, even my cat knows I have a big problem here. I should get help. Anyway, today I'm happy and healthy. Thanks to the best cat ever. 6 years ago, one of our 2 cats died, and my sister insisted that we cremate it and keep it in an urn. As soon as they'd placed the urn into a cabinet we had at home, our other cat sat in front of it making meowing noises that I'd never heard coming from a cat before, for like 20 minutes. I couldn't believe that our cat knew it was her sister and mourned like any other human. It was quite astonishing, really. When I was in high school, my family and I went to the feed store to get some supplies for our lawn and gardens. While there, we saw a brown bunny that someone had dropped off to sell. I begged and begged my dad for this rabbit. He said no. I came home a day or 2 later, and there is the rabbit sitting in its cage on our coffee table. Apparently my dad broke down and bought him. He was a great rabbit and very unusual in the fact that he thought he was a dog, always running around your feet when you came home. He would sit on the couch with my dad and eat ginger snaps and drink coffee with him. He always knew when you were sick. On the couch, he would jump up and just rest on your chest. We had him for 10 years and he died this past spring. My dad trained guard dogs in Vietnam and I have never seen him cry, not even at his own mother's funeral. But I'll be damned if that rabbit didn't affect my dad in such a way that he cried and said he lost a best friend. I was laying on my couch and wanted to turn the light off, but the switch was on the other side of the room. Within 10 seconds of me thinking that I wanted the light off, I crap you not, my cat comes flying out of nowhere, jumps and flicks the switch off. It was the craziest freaking thing, and to this day I wish someone had witnessed that with me. It was amazing. My cat is amazing. You know how outdoor cats will sometimes bring you presents like dead birds and mice? Well, our outdoor kitty brought us a ham and cheese sandwich. I have no idea where he found it. We had a golden retriever that thrived on escaping. Whenever the door was even a bit ajar, he'd take off and have day-long excursions, only to come back hours later with a huge grin on his face, and usually filthy from adventuring in the surrounding creeks and woodlands. If you ran after him, he'd troll the crap out of you and play chase games for up to an hour before letting you put the leash back on. If you happened to find him while you were driving, he'd readily jump in the car with you. No hassle. One morning as my parents were getting ready for work, the dog bolted. They both had meetings to get to and would only be gone for a few hours, and we knew he'd be back in the afternoon, so they left. When we came back, we circled the neighborhood looking for him and found him taking center point in the street with a pack of 5 other neighborhood dogs traipsing after him. Fricker had formed a gang and he was the gosh darned alpha. We pull up and scream for him to get in the car, which he readily does with a huge grin on his face as he slobbers and licks everyone. Business clothes be damned. Then, we take the long way around the neighborhood to get back to our house. By the time we do, all 5 of the dogs we just saw with him were waiting for him obediently in our driveway. We shooed them away. Later we found out from the neighbors that our dog had run from yard to yard and freed the fenced-in dogs by nosing up the latches. Once this started, other neighbors had been warning each other of the mass exodus by telephone, but our dog was too fast. People then had to replace the latches with locks since our dog had taught the others how to jailbreak. The Great Dog Escape may go down as one of my favorite stories in this thread, and the fact that his liberated brethren gathered outside his house to protest his imprisonment is the cherry on the cake. I had a house rabbit named Sirius that my parents rescued. She was going to be put down because her owners got evicted. She loved reggae and bassy music, and she used to lie still and purr along to it. She lived in my room for 6 months, and whenever I came home from school, she'd jump up and sit on my feet. She used to have these little wild fits and run around and do cartwheels. Then she died when my family was away on holiday and the kennel kept her in the freezer. I have a big fat cat named Pete. The day my son came home from hospital, Pete decided that he was in charge of the baby. He would lay with him for hours, and as soon as the baby would start to stir, Pete would immediately come and find us. Pete would soothe, clean, and be the best babysitter in the world. 5 years later, our cat still follows my son everywhere he goes. One more about Pete. My husband deployed for 15 months. The second he walked in the door, Pete ran like a gosh darn tiger and jumped straight for him. He refused to leave my hubby's lap for the next 8 hours. In conclusion, my cat likes boys more than girls. I'd been overly affectionate with my guinea pig for months, but he bitterly ignored me. Recently, I decided to ignore him, seeing as my loving nature doesn't agree with him.
Now the little butthole won't leave me alone, licks my face, my toes, popcorning, weird jump thing guinea pigs do when they're ecstatic, for joy when he sees me. God, he is such a butthole. Oh man, when my rats popcorn, it is so cute. It happens when they're playing, or if I give them something really tasty, like if I hand them a piece of chocolate. They cautiously take it with their mouth, then adjust the position of the food in their mouth to carry it easier, then bounce under the furniture to go and eat it. Their eyes get wider when they eat something tasty like, nom nom, oh wait, oh god, oh this is delicious. And they will also play a game with me, where they hop up on my back and walk around my hands and knees and stop by different furniture in the room. They will then hop off me onto the bed, desk, or whatever, sniff around, and then hop back on my shoulder to go somewhere else. This repeats several times before they get bored. My dog is always the star at the dog beaches. He will literally get every dog there playing in one big group. The other people now know him as the party starter. One day, there was this really old, giant wolfhound of some kind, just a generally huge, shaggy dog, Mutt. My dog runs over and the owner warned me that her dog was really old and grumpy, so I tried to keep my little party animal away from the big dog. Well, my dog won't give up and keeps going over and trying to wrestle with this gigantic old dog, and eventually the old guy breaks down and started playing with my dog. I'm all laughing because this huge dog is literally putting my whole tiny dog in his mouth, and they're generally just wrestling away and having the best time. And I look up and the other dog's owner is crying. "What's wrong?" I ask. "My dog has cancer and is getting put down shortly, and this is the happiest I've seen her in months." While all the other dogs were staying away from the big grump, my dog just rolls up to give this old timer one last tussle in the sand. It was truthfully one of the most amazing moments I've ever been a part of. It's something so simple, but I went outside with my girlfriend and saw one of my cats across the street that was excited to see us. He decided to make his way over to us, and since we lived on a big and busy street, I nervously watched as he approached the curb, but to my amazement, he turned his head to the left, then checked to his right, and happily pranced across the street. That little butthole just looked both ways before crossing. It was small, but it surprised me. My yellow lab would get offended at you if you talked crap about him or scolded him unjustly. Then you had to apologize to him to get him to quit sulking. As in, you actually had to go up to him and say, "I'm sorry, Tucker," and pet him, or he would refuse to look at you. My dad would never apologize to the dog, so the dog would stay mad at him for days. It was hilarious. Once when I was a kid, I was sitting on my bed reading a book. My cat was in the room and I had the door closed. The cat decided she wanted to get out of the room and started standing by the door and meowing to get my attention. I wanted to finish the chapter of the book off, so I just ignored her. She decided that wasn't good enough, so she jumped on the dresser right next to the door and immediately pushed a cup full of spare change off the dresser. She then stood stock still and stared at me. When I didn't get up and let her out, she pushed my watch off the dresser and stared at me again. She was basically saying to me, "I know this bothers you, and I'm going to keep knocking your crap on the ground until you open the door." My dog ejected a Celine Dion CD from the player whenever the fourth track came on. For the life of me, I can't remember the song, but when we discovered this, we had to see if it was an accident. For science! And by the third try, she gave us this look like we were torturing her. And it was Celine, so probably. My first dog was a psychotic Jack Russell by the name of Foxy. Foxy hated being indoors and would rather drag his bed to our garden to sit in the lawn, surrounded by 6-foot fences. One day, a cat wandered along the top of the fence and the dog saw it. God only knows how, but he jumped to the top of the fence and headbutted the cat off it. That dog was a nutter. People who've had a creepy feeling about someone come true, what happened? Not me, but my cousin. She was on an overnight Greyhound bus and a man got on and many of the seats were full. He walked towards the open seat next to her and looked as if he was going to sit there, and my cousin says, "You can't sit here." Usually a very open and friendly person, she kind of thought to herself, "Wow, I really came off as a B-word there." But she had a bad feeling about him. So the man finds another seat and my cousin falls asleep. A little while later, she wakes up to the bus pulled over to the side of the road and the police cars outside. The police came onto the bus and arrested the man who wanted to sit with my cousin. He had found another woman to sit with and had attempted the unspeakable act on her. How strange. I'm pretty sure that get the frick away from that person is a basic survival instinct. It's whether or not you're listening to it or not. Thank God your cousin did and is okay. My ex-boyfriend's dad had always given me the creeps. Nothing in particular, just a really bad vibe. Broke up with that ex about 8 years ago. I saw in the paper recently his dad got arrested for the unspeakable act. The girl told her mum when she was 13.
She'd been one of his victims since she was 5. Fricking horrifying. Back when I was in high school, some new kid joined. Only really interacted with him on the football field, but he really rubbed me the wrong way. I'm not a small guy, I'm big enough to fend for myself, so while he creeped me out, I wasn't really scared of him. I should have been, but ego gets in the way when you're a teenager. All of a sudden, he tries to injure me in discreet ways while playing football, like stamping on my ankle, tripping me up while none of us had the ball, nobody was looking, etc. After a couple more incidents, he stepped it up, a lot. He ended up stabbing me in the face while I was reading a book. We don't know if he meant to murder me or seriously maim me, but he punched me 3 times with a sharpened key in his fists. 2 of the blows got deflected by my glasses, which left a giant mark on the lenses and where my temple was. Sometimes you feel off about someone, but they don't look like they can really threaten you too much, but in reality, they can and they will. In college, I worked at a bar and they brought in this new bouncer. From the second I met him, I immediately felt like there was something seriously wrong with him. His smile and eye contact were too intense. I told a coworker that the guy gave me the creeps and she told me she thought he was cute and nice, and didn't get where I was coming from. A quick Google search pulled up his mugshot and articles about how he was watching his college roommate's dog one weekend and horribly attacked and maimed it. He burnt this poor dog and poured bleach on her. She thankfully survived and he was arrested. The article talked about how he was laughing at the police arresting him, saying he knows he won't get in any trouble. He was fired and told to never come back once management found out. Oof. Probably doubly saved in that he got fired before he abused his power. Bouncers have a lot of sway around the intoxicated clientele they serve, and it could have got really ugly. Not me, but my mum. My sister was going to visit her friend out of state, so her friend's friend offered to drive her there. He drove a few hours to get to our house and was noticeably tired when we arrived, so my sister suggested he just sleep on the couch, and they'll go in the morning. The entire night, my mum's going in and out of our rooms saying that there's something off about the guy, that she really doesn't like him but can't figure out why. She actually quietly went out the side door and wrote down his license plate at one point. The next morning, my sister's in his car for maybe 30 minutes before she feels sick and asks him to just take her home, which he does, much to my mother's delight. About 6 months later, my mum's looking at her news feed when she sees a familiar face and calls my sister and I over and yells, "I told you something was off about him." Turns out that about a year earlier he had murdered his ex-girlfriend and that his friend, who helped him bury her body, finally decided to tell the cops not because he developed a conscience, but because he was mad at him for stealing his toaster. In conclusion, my mum thought Houseguest was creepy. Houseguest turns out to be a murderous toaster thief. Well, to be fair, I wouldn't want to implicate myself as an accessory after the fact, but steal my kitchen appliances and it's game on. Pro-life tip: never steal a toaster from the guy who helped you bury your murder victim's body. There was a guy interested in dating my mum years ago. She wasn't interested, something seemed off. He was also interested in dating 2 of her other friends. All 3 had young daughters. Shortly after this, we moved away, and he started dating one of the friends. They stayed with us at a weekend music festival, and the girl wanted to stay in the trailer that our family had rented, so we let her. I'll always be grateful we did, because it kept her away from that creep. We found out he was abusing her shortly before we'd heard that he'd died in a car accident. Good riddance. Guys like that are the main reason I have no interest in dating right now. My daughter is 11 and I'm okay with being single for a few more years. I prefer that to unknowingly bringing a monster into the house. Honestly, having 2 stepdads who were awful to me, I thank you. I'm not a single mother, but I wish mine would have been okay with just the 2 of us for a while, because I always felt like she needed a man around and chose 2 scumbags, one who she knew since she was 16. My brother is 9, and I tell her that if she wants to get married again, I can take my brother to live with me, and I will be single. Met this guy on a night out. He was new to the area and friends with my friend's brother. He came across as nice and friendly, but then he started being a bit strange, like he kept rubbing my back and touching my legs. We all went back to my friend's house and I was pretty drunk, but this guy kept trying to get me to leave with him without seeing anyone. I told everyone something was weird about him. Turns out he'd been charged with doing the unspeakable act against a 10-year-old, and that's why he'd left his previous city. He'd crept on a 13-year-old a few weeks before he met me, and the police found out he was in possession of a lot of adult material containing children. My mum and I were in a cafe and she had her handbag down by her feet. This couple comes in and sits at the table behind us, and he attracted my attention because he kept poking his girlfriend, telling her how to sit, and just, the hairs on my neck went up. I hate that controlling bullcrap. So he's in my periphery, and this guy won't sit still when my mum says, "Hey, where's my bag?" She finds it a second later, moved and open. She reached in to get her purse and said, "My card is gone." So the couple behind had stood and were walking at speed toward the door. I didn't even hesitate. "Stop that man!" Because I figured I could apologize later if I was wrong. One of the waitresses was right by the door and she followed him out the door, at which point the guy dropped my mum's card, mumbled something about having found it, and then ran for it. I guess if he hadn't been such a butt to his girlfriend, I probably wouldn't have noticed. He was a friend of mine, nicest guy you could ever meet. He would go out of his way to do things for people. Something about him always gave me the slightest weird feeling though. We messaged at least once a day, and then all of a sudden I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. Turns out he was busted in a Craigslist sting for soliciting a minor for more adult acts. Hey, I don't know if anyone will see this, but around middle school I started getting creeped out by my father. He wouldn't even do anything you could point to and say, "That, right there, that's it." But you just got the feeling he was like a spider, watching and waiting, something lurking and dangerous. He began running a group called Scam the Scammers, where they'd make scammers do ridiculous things. It was all in good fun, because they deserved it. Humiliating, sometimes painful things. Teachers wouldn't call home to discuss anything we did, positive or negative. There were notes in my file to only discuss things with my mother, no matter what. He started becoming obsessed with conspiracy theories. Obama was a Kenyan Muslim, my mother was cheating on him with a woman and 3 men, all sorts of things. You got the feeling something was wearing my father as a skin suit. That's the best way I can describe it. Turns out he has an inoperable brain tumor. He's permanently changed. My father is alive, but he's no longer my dad. Oof. I mean, I'm all for some lightweight scammer scamming if it doesn't hurt people, but yeah, this case it was just the act of a deeply unwell man. This is tragic. Went to school with this guy since about 4th grade. He was a bully and made sure I knew that I wasn't liked, as he used an old doll and named it after me and beat it up with his friends. He always had a weird, creepy vibe, which got worse in high school. He and his friends were actually a lot nicer to me in high school, but I stayed away as much as I could as he made me uncomfortable. About a year after we graduated, he was arrested for following an underage girl and for grabbing her near her school when she was on lunch break. His friends have since cut off contact. Not sure what's happened to him, but he always creeped me out. When I was trying to get my mental health back on track, I went to see this psychiatrist who just gave me a super creepy vibe the minute I saw him, but was such a good psychiatrist I decided to ignore it. My gut feeling was correct when about 4 to 5 months into seeing him, he was arrested for having 10,000 plus unsolicited photos of patients' feet or them sitting on his couch that I've sat on. It sucks opening up to someone so much and having something like this happen, especially in his line of work. I had a doctor do the same. Different specialty, different kinds of pics. I'm currently awaiting trial. I know how you feel. It's so much more heinous to use a position of trust to gain access to people just to take advantage of them. Got a bad vibe from the dad across the street when I was a kid. Military guy who always seemed to be on a power trip. His oldest son and I went to the same school and would occasionally carpool. One day it was his dad's turn to drive us, his son stayed home sick, but he offered to drive me all the same. Thankfully, it wasn't a long ride, but the entire time he talked about his beat-up Camaro. Definitely creeped me out. Fast forward a couple of years, his wife threw him out one morning. Turns out he'd been beating the crap out of her for a while. One morning while hitting her again, he stepped on their 1-year-old baby who was crawling on the floor and broke the kid's arm. Never saw him again after that. It's like my worst nightmare to step on a baby or even a cat or dog. Or close a door by accident on a cat sneaking through behind you like they do. I was just thinking yesterday that stuff like this must happen fairly often even from good people that just make one wrong step. You could easily kill a kid, cat, or dog by slipping and falling wrong on them. The world is too dangerous. Time to go back to bed. I worked in fast food restaurants from 14 to 16. The lovely old couple sold it to a younger couple and I got the creeps around the husband from day one. Tried to ignore it, just got on with work, but the first time we were working just the two of us, he followed me into a walk-in freezer and grabbed me. I learned to pay attention to my radar after that. There was this guy that one of my friends at church was dating at the time. I really just felt something dark when I was around him. They eventually married but divorced later on. It turns out that feeling was because this guy is a legit serial killer. Initially, he confessed to I think 3 murders. The police now believe he's responsible for at least 10 within 200 miles of our small town. There was a kid who always weirded me out in school. Nothing major, but he looked at girls too long, and never when they looked at him. When I was in 8th grade, he told my girlfriend that he wondered what she tasted like and wanted to touch her skin. I threatened him if he didn't leave her be. I saw his name on an indecent offender registry last year, when I was helping my mum search for property details. Guy in high school always gave me the creeps, but I could never figure out why. 6 months later, they find a rifle in his locker at school and that it called in bomb threats. This was before any of the school shootings happened in the US, so at the time I didn't really think that much of it. Now it totally freaks me out. I just looked him up and there's an entire Reddit thread about him. He's now a white supremacist and a possible murderer. A dude couch surfing at my son's apartment had a very twitchy vibe like an addict hurting for a fix. I asked my son, "Oh no, he hates substances. He just has like arthritis or something." He borrowed my son's car, got his fix, crashed the car. Said he got carjacked. We reported the car stolen. 2 days later, he OD'd in my son's apartment. My son found him and the EMS guys saved him. My son realized he had issues and started looking for Medicaid rehab space. Dude OD'd again on the couch. EMS saved him again. Narcan is magic. We went to the hospital, told him he could not come back and to text my son where he wanted his stuff dropped off. We dropped it off at his grandma's house. Well, this fellow was clearly in need of serious help. Wish there was more to say about stories like this, but it's just sad, isn't it? Addiction is an illness. When I was 19, I worked at a local restaurant. I loved working there, but I ended up quitting because of some D-bag that was hired. He was in his mid-30s and gave every girl in the restaurant the absolute creepiest vibes. He was constantly saying inappropriate stuff about his past and was just a butthole to people in general. I hated working with him because he creeped me out and was also just mean. I started trading shifts to get away from him. One day a night shift manager was fired and our boss put creepy guy in a temporary manager position. I immediately went to our boss and told him I was uncomfortable with the idea and explained how creepy he was. My boss leveled with me and said the D-bag had no actual manager power and was just temporary until he found someone else. He was just there to run shifts. My boss arranged it so my schedule never crossed over with the creep. One day a coworker of mine got sick and I was asked to cover her shift. I get there and creep is managing. I thought I could deal with one night, but a friend of mine called the store sobbing. She had tried to call my cell around 100 times, but it was in my purse. She was crying hysterically and told me she'd been a victim of the unspeakable act and didn't know what to do or where to go, but that she was horrified and too scared to leave. I told my friend I'd be right there and told D-bag that I had an emergency and would be leaving. It was a slow night and I wasn't needed anyway, but he freaked out and tried to physically stop me, demanding to know my emergency. I tried to sidestep it, but eventually told him what had happened to my friend. He burst out laughing in my face and told me that was hilarious and not an excuse to leave. I told him to go to hell and shoved past him. He told me I couldn't leave and I said, "Watch me." I went outside and burst into tears and called my boss and told him I quit after explaining what had happened. A few months later, I was working at my new job and a former coworker came in and said they had some news for me. Apparently 2 police officers showed up at my old workplace and served papers to D-bag. He had been stalking a girl for the last 5 years, and it had started when she was 14 or 15. He had finally committed the unspeakable act against her. In conclusion, creep gets hired at work, laughs about the unspeakable act, I hate him, and I quit. He gets charged with the stalking and unspeakable act against a teenage girl. I always had a weird feeling about my stepdad. He always made me uncomfortable and I always felt like he was watching me. He would make comments about my body and my wardrobe, causing me to feel insecure and watch what I wore around him. When I told my mum, she would say things like, "He's old-fashioned," or "He's just looking out for you." My mum had gone out to the country to visit family, leaving my stepdad, myself, and my older brother to take care of the house. One night, my brother went to a party and I stayed home because I worked early the next morning, but left my bedroom door open so I could hear my brother come home and make sure he made it safe. Instead, my stepdad decided to crawl under my bed and try to commit the unspeakable act against me. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I pushed him off and ran to the bathroom. I was so freaked out, I just grabbed my work clothes and went to the car and drove off to a random neighborhood and slept in my car. My mum found out a year later because I told my older brother, but she's never talked to me about it. And she's still with him, too. When I told my brother, we gathered all the money we'd been saving up and moved out a month later. I'm blessed to have a brother who loves me and took me out of a bad place. He's been one of my support systems through all this. As for me, I'm in therapy to deal with my trauma and I feel like I'm getting better. A year ago, I wouldn't have been able to type all of this out. I worked for a call center a few years ago and there was a guy that sat at the desk across from me. He was about 40 to 50 and was not married. I'm young enough to be his daughter. He would do anything to talk to me. Come by my desk, run into me in the break room, get in the elevator with me. It was excessive but never threatening at first. He started to say inappropriate things about my outfits. I never wore anything overly provocative, but I figured he was just an awkward dude that did not know how to flirt. I just brushed him off time and time again, but something was definitely off about him. At one point, the secretary came up to me and asked if he was bothering me, and I told her what had been happening. Turns out he did this with only blonde women at the office. He was notorious for creeping them out. It started small, but then he would slowly transition into propositioning them for adult fun times and offering to pay for it. Knowing this, I avoided him altogether. I would pretend he was not there even if he was talking to me directly. I would catch him staring at me, but he backed down a lot after he realized that I wouldn't give in. One day, I came into work and he was gone. Desk was cleared off, totally empty. He apparently had sent another blonde woman a bunch of flowers and followed her out into the parking lot where she got off work. He had parked his car right next to hers and tried to force her into his car to go home with him, but she got away. He was fired and escorted off the property the next day by the police. I'm not sure why he had decided to come back or why he wasn't arrested sooner, but he was caught at work and removed. Nothing too eventful, but it is scary knowing that it could have been me that he forced into his car. A neighborhood kid I grew up with liked to play with matches and was fascinated with fires of any kind. It made me nervous because a sort of wild look came over his eyes when he'd stare into the fire he had created. I even told my parents, who mentioned it to his parents, who thought it was just a phase he was going through. Then, a few years later, it was reported that he burned his parents' garage down and was being charged with arson and clinically treated for pyromania. When I used to work at a deli, we hired a 20-something kid that looked like the serial killer Ed Kemper, sans the mustache. At first, he would amuse us by telling us stories about how he'd fought off 8 guys with weapons, or how his girlfriend was a model who traveled all the time, and that's why we never saw her. Then things started getting bad, especially when someone angered him. I would catch him talking to himself, saying things like, "If I see that B word again, I'm going to stick this in both her eyes." Management got wind of this and canned his butt immediately. 10 months later, we find out he actually went to prison for attempting to assault someone with a knife. In college, my best friend met a lady in one of her AG classes. The lady was super weird. I remember her having this huge vendetta against the university because they wouldn't let her use handicapped parking spaces when she had no proof she needed them. This lady is the reason I Google the crap out of new people now, because I looked her up and found an article that she was a serial animal hoarder and mistreater. That was from the year before we met her, and she would be the feature of similar articles in the future. This was at the start of our second semester there. If you search her name, plus Cat Lady, there are a bunch of new stories starting in 2003. It looks like the last updates were in 2016. In conclusion, best friend makes new friend who turns out to be an animal hoarder with dead cats in her freezer. Not me, but my wife. She's a teacher and had an elementary student who creeped her out from day one. He was manipulative, always trying to get his work done by copying other students' papers, and generally just a little odd. Partway through the school year, his mum had a manic-depressive episode and sadly took her own life. 2 years later, the student blew part of his hand off, making a pipe bomb. A year after that, he was also left unsupervised with a kindergarten-aged student who ironically, my wife would also later have as a student, and horribly mistreated her. He's in juvie now, though he should be out before he's 17. I was so young that I don't remember, but my dad has told me this story. My uncle had a roommate when I was about 3 years old. He was apparently a pretty nice dude on the surface, friendly, and didn't at all appear creepy to my dad or uncle that he lived with. Once, my dad and uncle expressed wanting to go somewhere that wasn't appropriate for me, and the guy offered to babysit. I was a very sweet and quiet kid, but upon my dad saying he'd be back in a little bit and I was going to stay with this man for a few hours, I apparently threw an absolute crap storm, kicking, screaming, and refusing. And even at 3, this was absolutely not normal behavior. My dad was really confused, but changed his mind and did not leave me with him. And only weeks later, my uncle discovered the man in question had a history of prison time for possessing indecent material containing minors and attempted kidnapping. People that quit their job in a hilarious fashion, how did you do it? My wife worked for a certain chain coffee shop a few years ago. She got another job, so requested reduced hours. This didn't happen for 3 straight weeks. During that 3rd week, she had a soccer mum from hell trying to get her attention by throwing fricking snowballs at her through the drive-thru window. My wife then stopped what she was doing and tossed the soccer mum's iced tea at her, which exploded everywhere and slammed the window. 5 minutes later, she had written her letter of resignation with the only things she could find: a purple crayon and a sticky note. I used to work at a place that rhymes with Pizza Hut, and the managers there were real cheapskates. There was this nice old man that would come in every Sunday and order a triple extra cheese pizza, and while they charged him for 3 times the cheese, they would forbid us from ever actually putting that much cheese on a pizza because apparently cheese in the pizza selling world is akin to gold. So instead of 3 times extra cheese, he would really be getting what the instructions would qualify as barely enough for a regular cheese pizza. On the day my 2 weeks' notice ended, the old guy just happened to be my last order, so I went into the walk-in and grabbed an entire box of cheese and proceeded to dump the entire thing onto his pizza, and tossed it into the oven. It was stacked so high that it couldn't even fit into it and half of it was scraped off. Anyway, the look on the old guy's face when he saw me do this made it all worth it. Imagine pure excitement. Needless to say, I didn't put the correct phone number down for future job references. That poor guy probably ordered double cheese and then thought, well crap, this isn't enough either, and went with triple, only to be given the same amount anyway. Worked in pizza place for 5 years. Cheese is definitely the gold of that world. It's the most expensive thing on the pizza. Dough and sauce cost almost nothing. As a home pizza enthusiast, this is definitely true. Especially when you get deep into the hobby, you will spend a damn fortune on that edible gold. Worked as a teller at a bank for a few years. GM and supervisor were both kind of crappy in their own ways. My buddy there was also a teller who felt similarly and wanted to get out. We started applying in places and both got interviews at the same company. As luck would have it, we both got hired and phone calls about 10 minutes apart. There was only one other teller aside from us, and when it got busy, supervisor usually had to jump in as well, and usually hated it. It felt like we were constantly short-staffed, and days when one person would call out sick or be on vacation would suck. Being down 2 people was the worst. Naturally, when we both got hired, it became a race to see who could turn in their 2 weeks' notice first. He printed his off and raced into the GM's office, walking out with a big smile. GM calls me in and offers me full-time hours after I had been requesting them for months. I jumped in saying, "Let me stop you right there. I'm also turning in my 2 weeks' notice." Remembering that look of disbelief will make me smile every time. A solid professional FU is just as enjoyable to me as going out with a bang. Wrote a normal letter of resignation before I got in the shower one morning. No big deal, got into the office and was straight ignored by management. Oh well, told you when my last day was. Fast forward 3 days, they pull me into a conference room to ask what it would take to keep me. I say, nothing, but don't want to ruin them. Sole IT manager for a staff of 70, and would be willing to consult part-time. They liked that idea and said they'd be willing to pay me my current hourly as a consultant. I was prepared for this and told them that that wasn't what I said. I said I would consult and my consulting rate was $200 an hour. They were flabbergasted and insulted. I was making about $18 an hour as a salary. They thought it was insane even though they'd pay a consulting firm $600 an hour when I was on vacation. Needless to say, having planned to quit, it was no skin off my back and laughed about it. They didn't take kindly to me laughing about their anger and told me to pack my crap. I did so, got an extra 10 days vacation paid out of it. 1992. I was 19 and working at the most pissant radio studio imaginable, AM Country Gold. The notoriously cheap, abusive and dishonest owner, a fella named Wes, had just screwed me out of a promised bonus. It was the latest in a long line of dishonest acts and I'd had enough. The rest of the sales team was afraid to stand up to Wes and he screamed abuse at them constantly. Except the lone woman, who he was constantly a creep to. They were all in their 30s and 40s working the same garbage job I was, but desperately needed it. I didn't. So I engaged in a very public shouting match with Wes in the lobby, saying all the things everyone there had always wanted to say. Then I swept the contents of the front desk onto the floor and stormed out. Instead of leaving, I went around the side of the building to a payphone and called the radio station request line. In a fake southern accent, I said, "Hey y'all, I just told my cheap, no-good, lying piece of human garbage boss to go to hell. Play me out with, 'Take this job and shove it,' and dedicate it to my former boss, Wes." The disc jockey had no idea what had just happened in the lobby, or that my Wes was the Wes, so he enthusiastically played my recorded dedication and added, "This one is for you, Wes. Choke on it, you sack of crap." The building had speakers inside and out, constantly playing the radio feed, so I got to hear Wes get clowned by his own radio studio before driving off into the sunset. Someone at my previous workplace, a huge grocery store in a large mall, went to the PA system we use to issue messages to the whole mall and said something along the lines of, "Dear customers, managers and co-workers, I fricking quit," and then proceeded to leave. Someone did this at the Walmart I worked at. Customer busybodies complained because of the curse word. The manager just asked, "What do you want me to do? He already quit." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there's really nothing I can do. As you already heard yourself, he frickin' quit." I wrote a respectful letter thanking them for the opportunity and all they've taught me. The first letter of every sentence spelled out F-U-C-K, boss's name. Nobody noticed. I knew someone who worked in a really crappy call center. His boss never had time for anyone. When he went to tell his boss that he was leaving, the boss waved him out of the room as he was on call. So he wrote, "I quit" on a post-it note, stuck it on the boss's screen, and just walked out. I did this when I worked at Kaufman's. I went up to HR to give my 2 weeks notice, GTFO, but before I could even get a word out, the HR lady flapped her hand at me and told me to come back in an hour because she was going on lunch. So I wrote, "I quit" on a piece of paper, signed and dated it, and left it on her desk. She called me later to let me know that since I didn't give 2 weeks notice, I would never be eligible to work for Kaufman's or Macy's ever again. I told her I'd just have to live with that. I do love it when people threaten to cut off a tie that I have clearly just severed myself. Bad jobs, bad exes, crappy ex-friends. I don't care if you never want to talk to me again. That was actually the point. I used to work for my father. It was probably the worst time of my life. He treated me like absolute crap, paid me very poorly, and made me work 70+ hours a week. I was young, just out of high school, and I complained about my predicament a lot. His response was always, "If you don't like it, there's the door." 6 months before I quit, he made me run his night shift, which meant 6 p.m. through 6:30 a.m. Monday through Saturday. I was very unhappy about this, so I applied for another job. I got it and went to my father's office with a list of demands. He responded with his usual reply, so I said, "Alright, I've gotten a job offer somewhere else. Frick you, I quit." The look on his face was priceless. He truly believed that because I had an amazing job security, that I'd be willing to put up with anything and that I'd stay there for my entire career. In one short, sweet instant, I proved to him that this was not the case, and he lost his most valuable employee. The icing on the cake was the fact that the job that I left him for is at the company that manufactures the very machinery and software he relies on in business. So anytime something goes wrong in his factory, he has to call me to fix it for him. So, how are family events these days? Honestly, they're much better than they used to be. I hated working for him so much and wasted some of my best years slaving away for him without so much as a thank you. I never actually talked to him when I worked for him. I'd have formal discussions when I had to for work, but outside of work I literally never saw him. Now I don't really have any issues with him at all. First job when I was 15 for a discount clothing brand store. Head manager was the aunt for our store manager, who was 19. Our store manager did nothing most of the time and used to chat to her boyfriend and friends quite loudly on the store phone, much to the annoyance of everybody. One night, it's come closing, we're grabbing our coats and getting ready to leave after a really busy day, and the store manager storms in, telling us how she's lowered the shutters and won't let us leave until we've helped her finish the one job she had all day to do, cause her aunt is doing a surprise inspection in the morning. Everyone is teed off, especially the people who've had to watch her do literally nothing all day. She turns spiteful, threatening to delay our pays, dock our wages, etc. All bullcrap. For one woman, it was the last straw. She had a kid to pick up from a club, so she waited till she left us alone to work, walked up to the shutters, pulled them up manually by hand, and all of us crawled out to freedom. We left her a note saying, "Good luck explaining to your aunt why 4 people just quit." During my exit interview, I told HR the real reason I was leaving was due to the quality of the office chairs. I said they were an eyesore, uncomfortable, and made me ashamed to come to work and resulted in subpar job satisfaction. 2 weeks later, I was told by previous co-workers everyone got brand new, top-of-the-line office chairs. I worked for my aunt for nearly 5 years. It was a product delivery and retail store. When I came to work there, I was originally supposed to be running computers and taking orders to cover for them in the week they all took vacations. As time went on, I started running the retail part on Saturdays, and my willingness to do so was the only reason they opened on the fricking weekend. I took over the office running by myself on Sundays as well, and at a point worked 7 days straight for a month or more until someone realized I might need a break. My cousin was in charge of the front retail, and she resented me for working in the back with her mother. She snapped one day and started being rude and abrasive to customers, so we got switched front to back. I worked every single job in that place, save for driving the box trucks. I'd had enough when they hired a new guy who I found out was making exactly the same an hour as me, $8.25. Never work for family. That sucks, I'm sorry, and you're right. Never work for family, never rent from family, never loan money to family. Business is business, personal is personal. Keep them separate. I worked for a law firm doing research and analysis. I wrote a custom program on my own time that would automate editing down these huge lists we'd get from an outside vendor, boiling it down to only what we wanted. First, only my team used the code. By the time I left, over 150 people were using it. It sounds minimal, but it was actually a huge time saver. The program would boil down a list, 100 pages long, to about 10 pages, a process we used to do manually a couple of times a day. A layoff was announced, and I was part of the outplacement, but the firm wanted to continue using my program. I asked if there would be compensation as it was coded on my own time, never paid for it, etc. I was told no, and besides, there's nothing really keeping us from using it when you're gone. For the remainder of my time, 2 years, I would create patches whenever the format of the data changed. With my last patch, I put in code that would disable the program and erase key parts of the program 1 month after my last day. From what I understand from people still with the firm, on day X, everyone came in, booted their machines, and the program was simply gone. Efficiency fell through the floor, delaying opening cases, billing clients, etc. I wanted 10K, they lost more than that in the first week without the program. Some have stated I might have been in a position to sue for compensation instead. This was a huge law firm, billed in the hundreds of millions a year, and had thousands of very talented attorneys. I could have sued, sure, but they could have made it very expensive for me, dragged it out so long, it would have cost me way too much. This is my third quitting stories batch of posts with this channel, and I'm not sure I'll ever get tired of this particular subject. There is some real vicarious joy to be had with people sticking it to their bosses. I was working for Argos as a Christmas job while studying. After a while, it was becoming too much as I had to stay in work until deliveries were unpacked. This meant some days I was leaving for my college at 8:30 a.m. and not getting home until 1 a.m. that night. One night was a particularly large delivery and it was getting very late with no end in sight. I decided I'd had enough and told the supervisor I was finished, didn't want to do the job anymore and wanted to go home. He rejected this and said I was going nowhere until the delivery was unpacked. I stood in front of him and repeated that I quit, therefore I don't care about the delivery. Completing my studies was more important to me than earning an extra bit of cash. He still said I was going nowhere and refused to unlock the door to let me out. Despite feeling I had case for false imprisonment, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I ran out the fire escape door and down the street never to return. I'll always remember the sound of the fire escape door making a big dong as it hit the metal railings, and I made my escape to freedom. Worked in a video store, back when there was such a thing. My coworker showed up having taken clearly a lot of green herb. He was also about 6'3" and 140 pounds, so he stood out in a crowd to begin with. Anyway, he came in for a 4-hour shift, stood in the middle of our bank of checkout registers and just ate chips. Like 6 bags of chips back to back, and he ate them slow, and he savored the crap out of each bite. The whole time he had zero facial expression. Think of the dull stare of a chewing dairy cow. After about 3 hours, he calmly turns to me and says, "I can't do this anymore," and gently sets down his bag of chips and walks out the door. We never saw him in the store again. At 16, I worked at a Dairy Queen brazier in Texas. My manager was a jerk. One night, I sliced a good chunk of my thumb off because they did not have the proper safety equipment. After being out of work for 3 weeks, I returned to work. My thumb was still pretty screwed up, but I was trying. My manager kept riding me, telling me I had to move faster. I was the only short-order cook when I saw 3 Greyhound buses pull up, and I knew I was in trouble. She came back into the kitchen and said if I didn't move fast for these buses, she'd find someone who would. That was the last straw. I knew no one in the entire restaurant could cook, so I took her up on her threat and simply walked out the back door. She flipped me off as I drove away. My friends told me that they hardly got any orders out and the buses left since they couldn't get the food out. I felt bad for the people on the buses, but I was sick of being berated by management. Worked in the cinema as a teenager, came in late for work after they changed my schedule during my days off and didn't think to mention it to me. Boss lost it and started shouting at me. As far as I'm concerned, if you need to shout, I'm not even listening. So I let her rant away for a good 15 minutes while I was at my locker clearing it out. When it finally clicked that I wasn't listening or getting ready to work, she stopped and asked what I was doing. I said, "Going to see Lord of the Rings with the lads who've just finished, as I'm doing nothing else with my evening. Might go for a pint after. What's your plans?" I like this one. It's simple and clear, and you didn't curse or scream at her. When my boss was having a meltdown, one of my coworkers kept saying, "Didn't catch that. Could you speak up?" She literally lost her voice, screaming at him. I worked for a Midas garage. One week we got a new service manager, and up until that point we always inspected, estimated, and sold our own jobs. This new guy wanted to inspect the cars and then checked the estimates. Early on Saturday morning, a girl in her 20s with a baby came into the shop and said her brakes were making noise. I took the ticket, test drove the car, and then pulled it into the shop and then inspected the car. I found the LR brake shoe had gone metal to metal. I mic'd the drum, and it was okay. Wheel cylinders and springs, hardware, all okay. I estimated the ticket. It came out to about $150 to fix the car. I went to the new service manager and handed him the estimate. He went and looked at the car. He didn't even take 30 seconds, and he said he needed to add new wheel cylinders, hardware kit, and 2 drums to the estimate. I told him all the parts he wanted to replace were okay. He said, "Do it." I just shrugged my shoulders and walked away. He went back to the service desk. I walked into a completely crowded waiting area, stood in the middle of the room, and proceeded to tell everyone in the room what the new service manager wanted me to do. I turned around and went to go get my truck to load my toolbox and leave. The service manager tried to stop me from loading my box on my truck. At the time, about 5 customers came out and helped me lift the box into the truck, and then started screaming at the service manager. They all wanted their cars back together and taken off the lifts. It got so bad one customer called the cops, and the service manager called the owner. The cops and the owner showed up. I was putting the girl's wheel back on. The owner came over to talk to me, and I told him what had happened and what I did. The owner went over to the service manager, who was surrounded by all the teed-off customers, and fired him. I decided at that point I was still going to quit because the owner was just acting. He told the service manager to do it, obviously. At that point, a few other techies were packing their crap up too. As I was walking up to my truck to leave, the girl walked up to me and thanked me. She asked if I knew another shop that could fix her car, and I decided I would fix it myself. So we went over to the parts store, got the parts, went to my house, and redid the brakes. Not to make this whole story even longer, this was in 1989 and we've been married for 24 years now. The service manager couldn't get a job at any shop around. I still see him every once in a while, gathering up the grocery carts at H-E-B. I managed to find a telemarketing job as one of my first jobs. It sucked and we were treated like animals, but it was close enough that I could walk there from home. I only intended to stay long enough to afford a car. One day, I realized that I had reached my set amount of dollars for a car purchase. As a joke, I strayed as far from the sales pitch as possible. I changed my greetings to things like, "Hey," or "Sup." I impersonated celebrity voices. People stopped working around me. They just listened in shock. But it also completely backfired. It was my highest day of sales ever. I sold 10 times my average. The pit boss was bewildered, which is why I wasn't fired right away. He listened in on my calls that day. He begged me to stay, but I was out. I used to work for a telecommunications company. My mum was very sick over the last 3 months of her life, so I had to go home most weekends to see her. It's a 6-hour journey to get from where I worked to the town where I'm from. When her birthday came around, I requested a couple of days off that I'd saved for this specific occasion. Yet the days off were denied because we were approaching a busy time of the year for sales. At this point, I hadn't mentioned what was happening at home because, well, I was always taught you keep your work and personal lives separate. But I said to my boss, who at the time I saw as a pretty compassionate person. She never took any issue when I got sick or was late for whatever reason. But when I told her, she just looked at me point blank and said, "I don't want to hear this." After that meeting, I went back to my desk and sat there for about 20 minutes thinking of a solution. The solution was to get my things and just leave. I said goodbye to my friends and on my way out, flipped my boss off and just walked out. I went straight to my car and drove back to my hometown that night. It was the best decision I ever made. I got to spend all my time with my mum before she went. We even got to go on vacation and spend one last week away together because I had time to do so. I'll never, ever regret walking out that day. Not exactly hilarious, but I had a good chuckle to myself on that drive home. The look on my boss's face will never leave me. It was sweet. I worked as a mechanic at Pep Boys several years ago. While I worked there, some of us discovered that if the drainage pipe in the shop were pressurized, the toilet would shoot water out of the bowl. The service manager at my store was a piece of crap. The day that I quit, I waited until he went into the bathroom to take a dump. I filled up a cheater, a device used to seat a tire onto a wheel, and released about 200 psi all at once into the drainage pipe. The toilet fricking exploded, the manager screamed, and then comes storming out of the bathroom covered in his own crap. It's the middle of the lunch rush at the restaurant. It's a gorgeous day, but the porch is closed, so myself and this poor middle-aged waitress are taking everyone who's expected to sit outside into our room. We're providing crap service because there's usually 5 servers for this many people, not 2. I asked the manager if she wouldn't mind calling people in to open up the porch, which is where all of these people are expected to sit. She goes off on me. "Are you freaking kidding me?" I exclaim. "You just swore at a manager. You're fired." I was going back to college in 2 weeks, so I didn't really give a frick. The thing is, she had to cash me out first, so for those 10 minutes I quietly cussed her out in front of everyone until she started screaming her head off in the middle of the restaurant. She was fired a couple of weeks later. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.